Andrew was part of the practice podcast. That one night we were drinking over here.
We were like, "Hey, where's the cameras at? Like, where?"
Yeah, we had no equipment.
He was ordering. He's like, "Hey, Ryan just found a bunch of stuff. He's fixing to purchase."
Yeah,
that feels like a lifetime ago now.
It does. 16 episodes ago. That was preseason episode 1.
Well, even then, it wasn't the next week when y'all started. It was like, hey, we're a month out from our first episode.
Yeah. We still had a little bit before we were able to.
What are you recording Mondays, posting when? Thursdays? When do you post?
Correct.
Yes.
No, you get it right. Yeah, it's really, dude, we were talking about that the other day. It's like we average about 2+, but even if you just do 2, we have, we'll be, after tonight, we'll be at like 32 hours worth of,
yeah, you're at like 220 an episode, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, yeah, we're much more. We're probably in like the 40-hour range. We at least will be after this, but probably, honestly, pretty close now.
Well, I read I was trying to think of or research some podcast etiquette. And there's not a lot of great stuff out there. It's like, engage in conversation and we'll keep it under 30 minutes or something like absurd. Yeah, it was a lot of stuff that was like, as a host, you could maybe apply some of that. But in terms of the stuff that Ryan's figured out.
I feel like there's certain things that are like maybe a good idea to implement, but at the same time, like if everybody followed all those rules perfectly, every podcast would be very similar, and it would be boring. It's like one cool part is everything can be different. Like I know we got a lot of people that were really surprised that our episodes were 2 hours long, and it's like, man, I think the second hour on most of our podcasts is better than our first hour because the conversation just gets rolling. I think because of the format being so open and loose that the conversation really starts to get good in that second hour.
Yeah.
It's like hour 45, it kicks off. And like, all right, now we're in the middle of like, okay, this is the meat of the conversation.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan, I was listening to one of his podcasts, not to compare us to that schlub, but we got a couple pointers for him.
Eat the microphone.
Yeah. One of the things, Joe. One of the things that he was talking about, though, is that he just kind of does the podcast mostly for himself, and how the one thread that kind of connects all the different podcasts, because he's like, we might do Protect Our Parks where we're literally on mushrooms, like, and it's just like comedians. And then he's like, the next day I might have a psychologist on talking about like fear, and then the next day I might have dude who like climbed a bunch of mountains, and then the next day I might have a beekeeper on. He's like, it's just shit I'm interested in. And he's like, because that it's very authentic. He's like, if I had anybody overseeing it that was like, no, we need to be like this, like that, blah, blah, blah. He's like, it never would have worked. It never would be what it is today, because he would have like, it's just, no, if he's interested in it, he does it. And I think that's kind of, to an extent, I think how we kind of do it too, where like, as funny as it is, because it is so cliche to just be like, oh, there's no agenda. Yeah. But like anybody who's ever been on the podcast, like there is zero prep time. Like we just sit down and crack open a couple of clubbies and get going.
I think I enjoy listening to episodes that are like that more, where it is just a genuine conversation. I feel like I've even like good ones. Like I find myself like even like in the middle of it, like this is almost embarrassing, but I was listening to a podcast one time. I think it was a Joe Rogan episode, but I literally like had a point in the middle of this conversation, and I paused it and said it out loud as I was driving down to Norman. And then I played it again. And I was like, good point, Kevin.
I think the lack of structure makes it organic. And I was talking to Ryan about, we were talking marketing before y'all came in here. And it's almost like we got here organically. So Joe Rogan's happened organically because they're just passionate about whatever they're talking about.
Yeah. So, I love what you just said, but I need to rewind a little bit. You did what, Kevin? You made a point during the Joe Rogan podcast.
Joe and the guest thought it was a great point.
Did they?
Yep.
Yeah. They even stopped talking for you. Clearly.
Yeah, it was great. Dude, they gave me the floor, and I was very confident.
Yeah.
Very precise with what I was talking about.
Joe was like, piggybacking off that, we're going to.
Yeah.
Can you let me know what episode this was?
Yeah. I
I can't remember. I think they were talking about their dogs or something, and I was like, I got a really good point about my dogs.
Yeah.
Stanley would fit in this conversation great right now.
Wow.
We can edit this out, right?
No, this one. This is going to be the clip.
The lack of editing is probably my favorite part of it.
Yeah.
Like, the amount of times y'all say, we could edit this out and don't, is probably my favorite part of the podcast.
I don't think anything's ever been really
I really
edited
don't
out.
think we have. No.
Yep. Makes Ryan's job easy.
Just play, upload.
Yeah. Just go for it. Okay, we're ready. But yeah, it's That is the funniest thing I've ever heard. I'll be honest with you. That's up there. That's good.
You're welcome.
I listen to a lot of Joe Rogan podcasts, and I've just never thought of myself as somebody who should interject, but that's good for you. You're really stepping up in the world.
I usually keep to myself, and I give them the respect.
That's good.
They're having it's two very important people talking, and I just let them do their thing.
Right, and a million viewers.
At least.
Yeah,
right.
But I had a good point. I felt confident about it, and they seem to appreciate it.
That's good.
They said dogs. She's like, actually, I have a point here. I'm an expert in this area.
I actually have 2 dogs at home.
The funny part is I can relate to this.
Have you done this?
Almost every time I talk, I'm like, should I not? And then if I get a point in, it's like I feel confident here.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're talking
you mean
about
like the actual podcast?
Yeah.
Not to the radio.
Oh no, I've never done it to somewhere like in my car.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about like
Just
in this
yourself?
room.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm not that weird.
Yeah. One time I was listening to the stand-up, and I said a joke, and then the crowd laughed. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah.
Looks like I'm not being very vulnerable the rest of this podcast.
I was just thinking, I was like, Kevin was open with us. He said this might be a little embarrassing, but
it was.
He really did.
I prefaced.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That's why you can't be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Sorry.
A doctor's note doesn't mean you don't get fired.
Let's move on. Andrew, where's the new job?
So I started this week as director of operations for a company called Sharp Development. So we are opening a restaurant, a taco and tequila restaurant, funny enough, next month, a hotel in May, and then 2 other restaurants throughout the year. So a lot of growth coming. We own a ton of commercial real estate, and basically as businesses would close or leave their lease, they finally, after 30 years, were like, you know what? I think we could do something with the space. The restaurant's been here for 20 years. We have the funds. We have the team. I think we could put something really cool here. So I started this week. I'll still be on with 1907. Love those guys.
Yeah.
I was going to ask what your involvement was.
Yeah, so I'm still kind of there as consultant and helping transition without me. But all these new places are
on to the next. Man.
Yeah, they're all walking distance from my house. I was driving an hour every day, back and forth between both restaurants. So when the hotel opens, I got to check it out. Rooftop bar and pool. We want to be. Yeah. I mean, have you seen the Ambassador here? Like, we want to compete with those kind of places.
Wow.
Like the boutique, really cool upscale.
Yeah.
Pool bar.
Yeah.
And you've done like high-end dining before, right?
Yeah. So my career was restaurants, hotels, and restaurants again. And funny enough, the week before I got like the real offer for this job, I was telling my girlfriend that I was never going to get back into hotels because it was 24/7. Like it never stops. You have to be at the highest level in a hotel to not work 24/7. You're 9 to 5 when you're at the top 1 or 2 seats. And a week later, a buddy of mine, who I've worked with probably 3 or 4 times throughout the years, was like, hey, do you want to be my number 2 in command for this new hotel we're opening? And then all the other openings, of course, you can do whatever you want with those. I was like, well, I know I would never do this, but I'm probably going to do this. So, and every time I say I will never do something again, I usually always do.
Yeah. Well, I think it probably is important to introduce who you are.
That's true.
We have gotten rolling, and this is a pretty typical thing. So this is a dear friend, Andrew Aguero. If you have never seen Andrew, you've heard his wisdom many times spoken about on this podcast. We bring up little Andrewisms all the time.
It's my favorite part.
He is USA's Today backup sexiest man in the world, and dear friend, restaurateur. He does hotels, he does everything, but just genuine great guy and big fan.
I think he busts more tables than anything. I think director of busting tables has been my title for about 10 years now.
Man.
I've just gotten really good at. I can bust a mean table.
That's right.
I mean, with the best of them.
Bussing. Yeah.
I think that's what's probably like in a genuine way. Like that's probably helped you like do well. Is you're not afraid to
absolutely
continue to bust.
I actually prefer
tables.
Yeah, I prefer to bust tables than any other admin work I have to do on my normal day.
Yeah.
I look forward to the rush where I'm sitting there busting tables and refilling waters. That's the high right there.
You know, that's funny that you say that because I think with Triad, just to kind of as a decent segue there, is like I feel like we get very caught up, and it's natural, right? And I think you were at a very similar position, and probably even years advanced past what we're at. But we talk a lot about what is it going to be? Oh, the day that I'm not in the store, the day that I'm not, and Kevin can attest to this a bunch, I'm sure. But what I'm going to say is like, oh, once you get to not being in the store, and then like you do that for a while, and then you come back and you realize how fun it is to be in the store. Like what it's actually like to take customers is a really good time. And in fact, some of the like sitting at a desk doing paperwork, being on the phone, being on your laptop isn't as always as fun as and glamorous as it seems.
It's fun for a couple days.
Yeah. It's fun to, like the door doesn't ding and you don't have to get up at that moment. Like there's less responsibility when it comes to stuff like that. But then there's the whole aspect of like having to manage yourself, which is like a whole nother like can of worms for sure. But I think, you've even said it before, coming back and just helping us in UConn, as UConn's been so busy on the weekends, is, for multiple weeks you had to come back and help. And you even talked about how like much of a positive impact it was on your like day-to-day mood, because like you were dealing with a lot of positivity and talking to people and excited and, taking customers and making new friends, and you realize how fun that stuff is.
I mean, it's like when people talk about when you force yourself to smile, it genuinely like helps put you in a good mood. When you're taking customers in the store, or I'm sure in restaurants as well,
Bussing tables,
you have to kind of force yourself to be in a good mood in that customer service mode. And that had a big impact on my mood overall.
Yeah. Well, dude, you get it. And I'm sure it's the same way in restaurants too, but man, especially when like you and I are working and you're just like, you're hitting your stride and we're joking back and forth. We're talking to customers. We're talking to each other.
It's the best part of your week.
Yeah. We can, like, you really hit a stride where you're just like going, and like, the energy's so good. And those are the most fun days.
A few years ago, I opened my first ever restaurant opening was actually a brunch restaurant. So Saturdays and Sundays were like our prime time. I mean, on Saturday in this podunk little town, you couldn't get a seat for an hour and a half. Wow. And I remember thinking back then, man, I can't wait until I have like a relaxing Saturday, whether it be at a slower restaurant or I have a Saturday off. That was like the dream. And then like 2 weeks ago, we had a really slow Saturday at work. And I was like, man, I wish I was on an hour and a half wait right now. I would go back in a heartbeat. So running around like a chicken with my head cut off, telling guests they're waiting 2 hours for a table versus standing here waiting for someone to come in because it's slow, it's ugly weather. Right. So like the grass is green, like when you're there, you don't know that till it's gone.
Well, and that's how it goes. I feel like, you kind of get, because I think in so many ways too, it's not even necessarily the act itself. Like I don't mind being in the store. I don't think you mind being in the store either, but it is like the statement that it makes once you have achieved a point where being in the store is no longer where you're best served. And that's like kind of a testament to yourself and your skills and what you're doing. And it is almost like an achievement. Like you've crossed a line into a difference in work, but it's kind of like getting to go back and do what that, the day-to-day stuff is. And I think this, for me, it's one of my favorite parts. Like, don't get me wrong. There's days where I'm like, I'm, whatever. But like, even in my career path, is like, I want to be in a situation where I'm kind of always coming back to the stores for some reason or another.
Well, like for Kevin, he's recently gone from like, within a couple of years ago, he had to be on shift. Like this is a have to. I wake up and I'm on 13th day in a row. Yep. I have to go and be in store and take customers. Now he's like, hey, I get to. Like we're opening a third store. I get to take customers on a Saturday. I haven't done that in 2 months. So now I look forward to it. Like it's still kind of exhausting on your 10th day in a row in UConn. But you're like, man, I used to dream to not have to be here. Now I get to be at my third location taking customers.
No, UConn has worn me out. That's for sure. Because I made a post about this, but I think I did because I was doing Saturday and Sunday on top of Monday through Friday. I ended up doing that for about a month without a day off. And I had about a couple weeks off and I'm going to have to go back on, but I'd much rather be in this position where we're too busy, where I have to jump in and help out, than in a position where it's like, crap, how do we make the store busier?
Right.
I probably say to myself once a week, I used like my problems now, I used to pray for years ago. Right. So now when I start to complain to myself, I'm like, man, I used to dream of being in this position. Now I'm here, like I'm complaining about it. I really got to change my perspective because this is a get to now. It's an opportunity that I've always wanted.
100%. I think getting out of being on the front lines happens a lot slower than people realize too, where I am getting close to probably year 10 of working in supplements. And again, like I said, I just got out of UConn on weekends, and I think we're going to talk about it tomorrow at manager meeting a little bit more.
We're bringing them back.
So we've got managers in bed meeting on Tuesday mornings.
I love being in Thomas's bed. That's actually my favorite place to meet him is in Thomas's bed.
We know you're here for the night, so you can be part of the meeting tomorrow.
So we actually rotate beds.
We meet in different. All of us meet in a different manager's bed.
Yeah,
that makes a lot more sense.
Right.
That's how you create culture.
Meetings are about intimacy.
True.
Full transparency.
Write that down, everybody.
Vulnerability.
Yeah, no, don't be vulnerable around these guys. But yeah, we're talking tomorrow that I'm probably gonna go. We're gonna shift some things around and try and get the weekdays covered as well. But that's probably gonna require me for a couple weeks. But again, man, that's not like, I will say I'm worn out, but I am not gonna complain about it. That's for sure.
It's definitely. Yeah, you're right though. Talking about, your problems now are things that you used to dream and pray for before. Because I think we even struggle at times and have to like actively, like consciously take a step back and like look and be like, oh my gosh, like we're sitting here with 3 stores all producing very successful numbers, plus opening a warehouse, and we're doing all these things, and it's easy to get caught into like the day-to-day, how do these things actually happen, how do you get there, and it's easy to kind of like glaze over the fact that like, oh shit, like we've got 3 highly functioning stores and a warehouse that's about to, before we know it, probably be full. And it's tough to kind of do that. And I think that's like, it's the catch-22 of it. It's the double-edged sword of finding success and wanting to be successful is you achieve one thing and it is cool for about 30 seconds. And then you're on to the next. Say that. Like we talked about in Yukon, like raising expectations, where it was like, oh, if we saw this amount of customers in a day, and then it was this amount of customers in a day, and then it was this amount of customers in a day. And now you look back and the first ones that we were excited about, they were like, meh, whatever. And it's like, you just slowly raise expectations. And it's like, it's funny how fast something you were excited about just becomes another day.
The norm.
You realize it's the process that's the fun part, not the progress. Because once you hit all those milestones, the last restaurant I just opened, 1907 Cantina, within the first, thank you, passion project. Within the first 8 weeks of us opening, we had a write-up from Oklahoma Magazine. And for years in my career, it's funny, Kevin said 10 years. This year is my 10th year of bussing tables. So I think this, like June or July, I got my first summer job bussing tables.
Yeah.
And I had always wanted to be in some sort of publication. Like I wanted my name with what I contributed to a restaurant in some publication somewhere. Sure. I didn't care what it was. And we got back to back. We had one Oklahoma Magazine, and then we had Tulsa World after that. And for those weeks following, we blew up. It was like, hey, I read about you on Facebook. I saw the article, and it was crazy. And after the article came out, I'd probably say a full 30 seconds after I read it, I was like, it's not really all it's cracked up to be. Like every cool.
On to the next.
I sent it to my family. They were all super excited, and I've forgotten about it for the last 2 months until this moment. It didn't even happen. Right. I haven't gone back and reread that article since I read it the first time.
Right. But isn't that what pushes to store 4, store 5?
Exactly.
I think that's the thing that pushes to the next restaurant, the next level of success.
You bask in the glory too long and you forget what the next step is.
Yeah.
So it's a balance. I mean, if you don't celebrate those things at least a little bit, then it makes the next one not as exciting.
Yeah.
So you have to celebrate a little bit, but then figure out what's next.
I mean, overnight success takes 10 years. That's what we're noticing.
Yeah. That was an interesting
good quote.
Have you read Good to Great?
No, not yet.
I think it was in that book where they talked about the overnight successes. They look like overnight successes because people don't see them grinding for 10 years that they finally realize them. Like how many people have just found out about Triad and are like, dang, Triad's blowing up. It's like, no, we're not.
We've earned this.
Yeah. It's been a steady pace of growth for 7 years now.
Well, you have new employees. Ryan was telling me you're at the point now where you're meeting employees after they get hired, which is a crazy thing to think about considering, you were an only employee with, Thomas not that long ago.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that you're there now, for those new employees, it's hard for them to see the grind you took to get there. Because what they see is like, oh, Kevin pops in sometimes. He'll come in, he'll pop in 2 or 3 times a week. He'll bring a shipment. And like, no, Kevin worked by himself for years. Thomas worked by himself. Like all what it took to get here, they don't get to see that part. So
it's funny you say that because it is literally something I bring up in the interview. Whenever we're doing my version of the interview that I have with people, I always explain to them like you almost have a disadvantage and it's not your fault, but you only know Triad as the successful version of Triad that you see today. And you don't know what it was like when, you didn't go to a gym and see a Triad shirt. You couldn't pay somebody to wear a Triad shirt. You weren't there when we were going hours without people. You weren't there, and that's no fault of your own, but you can really easily develop a complex of that this just happens. Like you open the doors and people come. Because for a lot of people, even now, that is what happens. You open the doors and, no offense to anybody, but it's like if you go work at Quail tomorrow, you open the doors and people are there. People are waiting for you to open.
I love talking to especially people that work at Quail, where it is just nuts all the time about the days that we had where we didn't see a single customer.
Yeah.
Like imagine Quail without open for 12 hours in a day without a single person. Actually,
Seriously?
one person walked in and it was a UPS driver.
Right.
Back in my day.
Yeah. You guys got any packages to pick up? Nope.
Wish.
We sure don't. All right. See you later. Right.
I think that's where some of the disconnect too with wanting, and obviously with everybody coming and working for the store, a big part is, we've talked about it a bunch before, is the opportunities that the company provides. But there's such a disconnect with the companies at the size now where it's you play, it's not you and the company, it's you, the company, and a dozen other people. You're playing still as big of a role, but relative to the rest of the company, it's a lot smaller. So it's hard to see what your effort is actually doing. Where that's where I think it's like back in the day when we had days where we didn't have a single customer walking in the store. It's like, I will do anything to get just one person to walk in this door. And I don't care what I have to do, what I have to do to get out there and talk to people and convince people, or I will put so much effort and get rid of all of my pride just to get someone to walk in this door.
And I know the perfect example of that, and we talked about this for the first time in a long time the other day, was parking lot flyering.
Yeah,
we used to
guerrilla marketing.
Yeah, we used to stick flyers under windshield wipers at the gyms.
I hated doing that.
Oh
dude.
yeah, that's about your pride for sure.
Yeah, I hated being that guy. Yeah. I didn't I don't get super annoyed by flyers in my part, in my windshield, but I know some people do, and it's I don't want to be touching people's cars, and it kind of cheapens the brand a little bit. But it's man, it's either this or we go out of business.
Yeah, we've got nothing to lose at this point.
Exactly,
everything's on the line.
Exactly, right. And it's. I think it's helpful to where new employees don't get to see that. I think it is helpful to talk about that and tell them about those stories.
Well, and you can even look to other examples that I think are really funny because people don't think about them or know about them. One of the most famous ones, this is something I haven't thought about in years, is we came from Supplement Superstores owned by Andy Frisell and Chris Klein, who own First Form. And in the back of the original location, if you look, there's this weird thing on the wall back there. And this was back before cell phones were a big deal, back when the supplement store wasn't doing very well. So what they were doing in between customers is they were running a phone line, love line, where they were connecting phones for dating. They were running a through the phone dating service. Wow. And they just literally had this whole brick of phone lines, and they would literally connect, just making money any way they could before the store was profitable or making. And so, and that's First Form. That's how First Form exists today, because they did a love line in the back of one of their locations of Supplement Superstores.
I think they might still do that as
a side hustle. When do you stop trying to grow? When do you stop doing the love lines?
Andy's love line.
Man, when I met y'all 2 years, I was telling Ryan a few minutes ago, when I met y'all, I was going on 2 years now. I knew every employee of Triad, at least by first name, had all their Instagrams, and it was a pretty small group, just 2 stores. And now I think there's as many employees I don't know as that I do know, which is crazy to see them see them talking about supplements on their Instagram. Man, I could walk into any store right now and probably run into somebody new who would ask me if it's my first time. It's crazy to think about.
Well, you haven't even met our newest guy, have you?
Me?
Yeah,
I met him on Friday.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. He was in training for a week before I met him.
So you're almost to the point where you could go shop in your own stores.
If
you have if you have a new guy, I said Thomas stays in the back. You have a new guy at UConn, you could go shop your own store. You're not too far off from
go shop in the store.
From Alyssa walking.
I'm excited for this. I'm excited to do that.
Yeah. We do some Undercover Boss.
Yeah, I love that show.
Put a fake mustache on me.
Yeah.
When I go to new jobs, I always I show up first as a guest, whether it be a hotel or a restaurant. When I know no one knows who I am, I always guest shop and see. I take notes when no one knows who I am.
Oh, for sure. Whenever I go back to Springfield, one of the regional managers for Supplement Superstores has me go shop this S2s. And so it's fun. It's such a good time. Laurel hates it because I mess with the guys a little bit.
Give them a hard time.
Well, I'm just asking a bunch of questions and kind of being a little rude and
That's where you test it.
It's really funny though.
You must not be as famous as I am.
Yeah. No,
Anthony and I walked into the Springfield North store. we were both wearing Triad shirts, and Chad Miller, one of the original partners, now lives in Springfield and shops at the Springfield North Store.
That's so funny.
Hilarious story, because that's where he started, moved to Oklahoma City, helped start Triad, moved back to St. Louis, then back to Springfield, now shops where he used to work.
Yeah.
But Chad shops there and knows them and everything. So they know of Triad because of Chad. So.
Yeah, I made sure to not wear a Triad shirt.
Oh, we've noticed.
Yeah.
We noticed the subtlety.
Look, man.
It's all I got.
Yeah.
I told Kevin, I actually tried not to be cheesy, because all I wear is Triad stuff. Everyone in Tulsa knows that I only have Triad. So I was looking through my laundry on the way up here. I was like, wait, I don't have anything else. That's all I got. It's like, what Triad shirt do I wear for the day? But this is all I got. So,
right. That's so funny. That's how it goes, though, man.
It takes over.
Dude, for real. It's really weird when we'll stop in a thrift store for whatever, and you can almost always find a Triad shirt in thrift stores now.
That's awesome.
It's weird, man.
Yeah. We when we go to company events, I a lot of times don't wear one. I'll wear like something maybe a little nicer. We went to the trampoline park.
Will Jitsu, I saw that.
Yeah.
Will Jitsu. Yeah, that was different. But this was last weekend. Wait, no, yeah, you did. Will Jitsu.
Will and I fought at the trampoline park.
Forgot about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wore just a blank shirt, and some people were wearing Triad shirts, and we were just making a fool of ourselves at the trampoline park. We're playing dodgeball with a bunch of little kids.
Hammering them 80 mile an hour fastball.
Honestly, though, dude, we were smoking
Ruthless.
kids.
There were a couple little kids that got smoked on accident.
Or on purpose. I don't know. You step on the court, you got to play the game.
Don't play with the big boys. Yeah, it's your fault for stepping on the court with us.
We were like a big group, and we like kind of made our way over to the dodgeball like court, and there was like tons of little kids in there playing like against each other, and they all kind of stopped, and they were like, and like one of them looked over, he's like, all the little kids against all the big kids. I like being referred to as a big kid.
Tom, I was like, y'all are the big kids. If for reference, these two are the big kids.
Yeah. And then the funniest thing is, out of every single person that we had there, this is so funny. Out of every single person that was there, one kid walked up to Preston and goes, "Are you Brantley's dad?" Or of anybody, you ask Preston if he's someone's dad. What?
Yeah, and I'm Preston's grandpa.
Who's Brantley?
Yeah, I don't know.
But I had a kid come up to me, and he was like, "Are you guys part of some church group?" And I'm like, "Yep."
Now get the hell out of my way.
Kicks him.
Bam. Smoked him.
Man, with you've worked in the restaurant business. What would you call it? Hotel and restaurant?
Hospitality.
Hospitality. That's the word
they call it the hospitality industry. I think hospitality is used too loosely to refer to only restaurants and hotels. But I think y'all are the first retail store I know of practicing the art of hospitality, where it's just making people feel important, making people feel seen. You know, I believe everyone walks around with an invisible sign around their neck that says, "Make me feel important."
I've heard that.
Now, now to some people, it might be 20 minutes with Thomas. To some people, it might be, hey, in and out, 30 seconds, I'm here just for my energy drink. Like whatever that looks like. So you got to get that read between the front door and the counter. But the reason I fell in love with Triad so quickly was I noticed the hospitality. So I can see it from a mile away. And y'all practice it so organically and naturally. I'm like, man, these guys don't even know that it is one of their core values because they don't talk about it. But it definitely is. Like making sure the customer, you're always looking out for their best interest, no matter what you do. Ryan did it with me first. When my first instance in the Triad was in Norman. And I walked in, I had followed you guys on Instagram. I had been going to Kaizen for a little bit. And I was super excited to try y'all because everyone talks so highly of you. And I went in and I asked Ryan for a specific brand. And he was like, "Oh, actually, you know, GNT carries that as proprietary." And that was basically it. He didn't try to sell me on anything else. He didn't give me the used car salesman spiel. So I was like, okay, well, I respect that. You know, you were honest with me from the get-go. And I bought like a 3D or something. And when I left and I walked into GNC, and the entire experience was like a used car salesman, which, you know, no offense to them, but I mean, it's
different.
It's what salespeople do. It's their job. It's what salespeople do.
Right.
And I was like, this is what separates it. Is Ryan legitimately cared about what was in my best interest, which is, hey, I came here for this specific brand. And that right there got me to my second trip, which got me, you know, 2 years later on the podcast. So that instance right there could have easily deterred me from the company. But he was like, no, you know what? I could try to sell him on something, but that's not in his best interest.
Yeah.
And it's organic. You hired for that and you trained for that.
Right.
Well, it is funny, fun fact, my first 3 years of college, my degree was going for hospitality management.
Totally believe that.
And then I think I would have done well with it. I think
you are doing well with it.
Yeah, right.
I think you're currently in the middle of what you were studying.
But what I think is super cool, and one of the funny things that you remind me of whenever you said that, is one of our absolute go-to things, as funny as it is, when people come in and want a job and they're like, oh, I used to work in supplements, or I know all about supplements. I'm like, yeah. But if somebody goes like, yeah, I've been a server for 3 years, I'm like, you want a job?
Yeah.
My last restaurant, I believe they're the best bartenders in the game right now, and I did not hire one single bartender that had ever attended a bar before.
Yeah.
I hired personalities with great attitudes, people that I enjoyed conversations with, because I can teach you the hard skills.
Yep.
Right.
I cannot teach you to not. So I was in my new job. One of the current directors was trying to talk to the bartenders about pushing more profitable drinks. Like, hey, this is on the menu. This one makes more money, so push that. And I'm like, hold up.
Yeah.
Like that's like I understand that's what you've learned for the last 30 years. But if I push the most profitable drink and they only have one because they don't love it, then that one bad drink costs me hundreds of drinks later down the road from a regular customer versus like, hey, I don't make that much money on this item, on this entree, on this wine or whatever, but I think you'll love it. Like I actually lose money on this.
And that's and that's where we look at it as that's the job on the people on the back end of like, hey, if you're, let's say making no money on something that is like on a drink that's popular, but you've got other drinks that you could be making a margin on, but aren't as good or just not as popular. It's your job to figure out, okay, like if we're losing money here, let's make up money in other places.
Exactly.
Or find out ways to let's make a drink as good as this other one.
But you make better drinks. If that's the issue, you figure out, okay, how can I make a more profitable item that is better?
It's your job on the back end. It's not their job to push it.
It's not the bartender's job. It's the manager's job.
Exactly.
Both of y'all have eaten at 1907 barbecue, and people are blown away when I tell them that every barbecue restaurant I've ever known loses money on brisket.
Yeah.
And it's always going to be their best seller. It's the most expensive protein. You lose half of it when you cook it. So you start off this big and you get this big.
Oh.
So whenever you're selling brisket, it's a passion project. You don't do it to make money. You sell beans to make money. You sell rice to make money. Potato salad makes
Beans
money.
in your brisket.
Yeah, but no one gets rich off selling brisket.
Right.
You get rich off the drink you sold with that. And enough people loving your brisket enough that they get a brisket sandwich and a potato salad.
The brisket's your loss leader. That's what keeps people in the door.
It's our loss leader. And if you don't have one that is good and not making money, you're probably not that great of a business. You don't have something on your selection that is really, really good that you don't really make money on, then you're just trying to make money.
Right.
Yeah.
In the end, doesn't really work out very well.
Yeah. People stop coming.
Yep.
So being in hospitality and obviously understanding what it takes to provide a very high level of customer service, is that more common in the hospitality industry of being able, like, and it sounds like you've worked at like a wide range of fine dining to barbecue and everything in between. Is it more common for the industry as a whole to provide the best customer service, or is it more niche? Because I know it's more niche for us in the supplement industry to provide just this, trying to do like next level customer service.
It's not as niche as supplements because there are brands that y'all know that the reason they're niche is because of their guest experience. So Chick-fil-A, for example, what separates Chick-fil-A from any other fast food restaurant? The experience. Chicken's great, don't get me wrong, but there are arguably better chicken everywhere else. It's the experience you get as a whole from when you walk in to when you leave. The Ritz-Carlton and hotels. Everyone knows the big branded hotels that are super nice because like you could pay $1,000 a night at any expensive hotel, but no one really offers the experiences that the Ritz-Carlton does, the Four Seasons. I mean, you can name a variety of brands, but it's the experience that what separates the 1%. So we have a bigger 1% than supplements. We have nice restaurants. We have the Mahoganies of the world. I don't know too many restaurants in Oklahoma City that did in Tulsa that are local, but you get good everything when you go. Good drinks, good service, good food, good ambiance, you're firing on all cylinders. So it's probably 10% of our industry, but for you, I mean, you're in the 1% category for supplement stores.
It seems like it's more of a well understood spectrum of level of customer service.
If you understand it, then I think you could become great if you can understand it and execute it consistently day after day, year after year.
The Chick-fil-A one's it's an interesting example too, because you're not paying $100 to eat a meal.
Exactly.
They're providing excellent customer service, but for someone that's just grabbing lunch while they're at work.
Well, and that's, I think, funny enough, is we have multiple people who have worked at Chick-fil-A, but it is
those are great employees.
Exactly. I'll hire those in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Right. Well, and what's funny about it is, and I think what kind of sets Chick-fil-A apart, especially when it comes to how they train and interact with their employees, is they are not just giving, and this is obvious, but they're not just giving good customer service to you. They're giving good customer service to the person. What am I trying to say here? They could piss somebody off and they wouldn't notice. Like the store wouldn't notice, right? But they don't. They give it consistently, every single person, no matter how rude they are, no matter how many people are there, no matter how long the line is, you're going to get that consistent service. And one after another. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if I'm going to see you for 30 seconds. I'm not going to be the reason you don't come here anymore. And like, I think that consistently of doing it, plus it just becomes the standard. This is what you do every single time, no matter what. Same thing can be applied to us, is like, we talk about never taking an interaction off, and like you can't. Like, is every single time somebody comes in, every time somebody comes through our drive-through, you have to give that Chick-fil-A experience.
I feel like it's that you go like if you looked at like the Chick-fil-A team as a whole, like if you walked into one, I bet you would be hard pressed to find an employee that you could piss off or make. Like you might be able to make them mad, but they would never show it. It would be hard to make them like break character.
Well, it's cliche, you're only as strong as your weakest link or whatever. But like when it comes to standards, your standards aren't like as high as you expect them to be. What is the lowest level you're willing to accept? So what is the worst interaction that you'll accept and overhear and say, hey, actually, we don't do that here. Try saying this next time. Or for me, what is the worst plate? What is the worst drink I'm willing to send out? So, we strive to put out, our bartenders know that, when in doubt, pour it out. If you taste it and something tastes off, you've had that 1,000 times. It's probably off. You probably screwed up somewhere.
Right.
That's okay.
Right. I'd rather you pour it out than serve something bad.
I'd rather you, and they know. I mean, I have beat that into them to where I'll watch them taste it, make a face, and dump it out and remake it, and they know that that's not only okay, it's preferred.
Right.
Because I'd rather you dump
celebrate
out. I would rather you dump out a perfectly good drink than sell something that is below our standard.
Right.
So when I taste something, or whenever I'm trying, whether it be salsa or brisket or cocktails. What is the lowest level I'm willing to say, yeah, that'll do? Yeah. That's where your standards are. What is the least you'll accept? That is where your real standards are. Because not going below that is where, okay, that's what really, when do you throw the drink out? Right. What level is that?
Well, and like you said, you're building that culture. You're building the safe culture of that bartender knows, like, they're not sitting there, oh man, I messed this up. Crap, what do I do now? It is, nope, you know what to do. If it's messed up, dump it out. And we have the same thing too. Like if an interaction with us maybe doesn't go the way that we were hoping for it to, and somebody kind of has like the idea that, hey, maybe we are just any other supplement store, we're just the used car salesman or whatever. In my training for customer service and stuff, I go, if it starts to go down that line, be the polar opposite. Like push the spectrum so far the other way that we couldn't possibly be salesy. If they are in for protein, send them home with samples. If they're in for this, let them try it. Like you know what? In that situation, if somebody even has the hint that we are just a commission sales-based store, make sure they do not spend money today.
Yeah.
Don't let them.
One thing that is kind of a nice fail-safe too is if you just for whatever reason you have a customer that like you just cannot make happy, or you just kind of hit something that they just don't take well,
right.
Or just whatever happens is especially if it's their first time in, we write thank you cards, and we don't talk about it a lot because we like to make it a special like individual experience. But I think this is a good point where if you have one of those, like I know I've had a handful of customers where like, man, I'm not really sure. Like that just didn't go how I hoped it would go. Right. And I didn't have the ability or the chance to save that one or end on the note that I wanted to. It's like writing him a card, sending it to him, making it the best card that I possibly can. It's
go
like,
out of your way.
Yep, exactly. To make sure that they know like, hey, like I didn't, even if you took something the wrong way, like, hey, here's a confidence that I did not mean it
tangible example. This is we're good.
I have a few things on my counter that I like to look at. Danny Meyer's Setting the Table, which I think is probably the best hospitality book out there, is on my counter. There's a few other like decorations that I like to look at, and the thank you card that you sent me, 2 years ago, was on there because that was the first time I had seen something from a company that was sizable enough to be like, handwritten cards is a lot when you have hundreds of customers consistently. So I saw that card. I think you sent it to Velvet Taco because you didn't have my address at the time. And when I read that, I was like, this came from Kevin. I read it in his voice, and it was like, Kevin wrote this. And there's probably 10 other employees that could have written that. But, the owner of his company went out of his way, sent this to me. this is what separates the, the good from the world class is that personalization, the experience of I saw you, and this is going to make you feel a little bit more important. When you came in with your Santa suit, with 3Ds, you knew that was my go-to energy drink. You showed up at our job and surprised the whole restaurant with energy drinks, and stuff like that is what you won't see big box stores doing.
No.
And they won't create experiences the same way.
Well, and I think that the coolest thing is, at least from our perspective, and hearing that, obviously that's super cool, is just how excited we were.
Yeah.
Like, I was so excited to, man, you were my favorite stop that day.
I
couldn't wait to show up there that day.
Yeah. You made it onto, I mean, Velvet Taco now has, I think, 60 restaurants. At the time, they had probably 30 something, and you made it onto the portal of like every restaurant in the company saw Santa come by with energy drinks.
That's right.
There's hundreds of employees all over the country that got to see me and you in that picture.
Hey, that's awesome.
So
that's
like
cool.
You don't see like something small like, a handwritten card, Ryan sending me to, a different supplement store. You don't know what kind of impact those could have for positive or negative.
Yeah.
But now you fast forward, you're like, man, had we not done those things, I don't know if we'd be here right now.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
1000%.
I mean, 4 people had to bail on this podcast for me to get invited. So, like, if we wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have been your 5th string backup.
It's a million little things.
Exactly. Yeah. It only
more
took
like 7 or 8. But well, and it's funny because I think the real testament that happened for us when it came to that kind of situation was we got a unique opportunity as a company where we were very fortunate and very lucky that this is the way that things went. But we were very surprised and taken back whenever COVID first happened, and we saw the support of our customers coming back when things were sketchy. People were working from home or people weren't working at all, and money was tighter for people, and we got to stay open. What a blessing. But one of the things, and I remember you telling me about it because I was at the hospital at the time, but you were telling me about it, is just people coming by and being like, hey, you know what? I don't actually need more protein, but I'm going to grab another jug just because I love you guys. And like, I just want to make sure that you guys are doing good. And it's like to have, a unique opportunity where we had just like troves of people just being like, no, you have always given a shit about me. Here's my opportunity to give a shit about you.
It's only loyalty when it's tested. Like when times gets up, you really figure out what loyal looks like when times are tough.
Right.
And the fact that y'all maintained sales throughout COVID was like, hey, we don't just have transactions. Like we have friends that care about us that'll go and spend a little more money than they should, even though times are tight right now, because they know that if everyone does that, we'll get to stick around.
We grew through COVID.
Yeah,
that was the nail in the coffin where we built the business on building relationships with our customers, and that was the nail in the coffin of we're doing this the right way.
Yep.
Because our customers helped us get through COVID without a scratch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is like, who can say that?
Yeah.
Like
very few places grew through COVID.
Right.
Because they had a loyal fan base.
Right. And that was like, and that's what's so cool. And I think why it's so important to make sure that we're hiring the people that we hire, because, and that'll be our toughest thing, right? Like our toughest thing going forward will be continuing to find the people that
I think that every time y'all post a new employee, I'm like, man, this is going to get harder and harder and harder.
We've been we've been good so far.
Yeah.
But it's, I always say, like, Kevin always says, like, it's supposed to be hard, but we keep doing it,
Yeah.
But it's finding the people who, Alex reached out to me the other day, and I thought this was really cool of him. So I'll give a quick shout out to Alex. Was one of our customers who we just had a bad storm that had come through Oklahoma, and he noticed not even something that she had posted or anything, but he had noticed that where she lived got damaged from the tornado. And like his first thought was, he immediately reached out to me and he was like, hey, I'm going to follow up on this and see if like her house got damaged. But I think it would be really cool for us to at least reach out, maybe send a letter or something, just do something for her as she's going through this like time of crisis.
Yeah. Hey, we're here for you. Thinking about you.
Right. And I like, I was like, yeah, man, like I love where your head's at. Just find out a little bit more information, as to like what's going on. But dude, yeah, like that's like you caring that much about her, because she supported us a lot and she's had us out to things and whatever, but like you caring enough about her that was your first thought when you heard that the neighborhood she lived in potentially saw some damage, was like, what can I do for anybody that I know there? What can I do for any of those people?
You can't teach care. Like if you hire nothing else, hire for the fact that they care.
Say it all the time, man.
Yep. That's, like you talk about, like, not hiring people with the experience or the knowledge, or you can teach the hard stuff. It's hiring people with high character.
I prefer blank canvases. I tell every server and bartender I find that has the least amount of experience, because then they think they know, they have bad habits. And I'm biased. I've opened so many restaurants now that I've realized I like opening myself than going into someone else's business and having to learn what they do. And it's easier to create a culture for me from scratch than try to transition bad habits. You got to lose employees, and it's a really tough. It's tough to make changes, especially quickly in an already operating business versus I'm making every decision myself. I'm hiring every employee myself. So I'm just kind of a control freak in that aspect, that I like controlling every aspect of it, because once you have someone with a bad attitude or bad habits, it's almost easier to get rid of them and replace them than try to break that. It's happened, but it's rare I'm able to fully transition somebody.
Right. I'd rather have someone that's willing to jump in and not be up to speed, but willing to row the boat in the same direction than someone that's knows what's going on, but rowing the boat in the wrong direction.
Keyword is willing. I'd rather have somebody willing. Period. Yeah, like I'll take willing over anything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is, yeah, and I think that's why we do look to the hospitality industry as a place to hire from a lot. Like we have a lot of people who have been servers, worked at, we talk about people who have literally worked at Chick-fil-A, that we have multiple of those. But it is, when somebody says that, I always perk up, because like, two things I know. Like one, like if you've done it for any amount of time, you know how to give the customer service that is required to do it. And two, you've dealt with people that were not being fair to you
in their worst state. Like a diner that's upset about something going wrong is like someone's worst version of themselves. Like,
right.
It's
for sure. And it's like, if I know that like you can be nice to people even when they're rude to you, then it's like we can work with everything else.
We can teach you everything.
Everything else.
Hard to do.
Yeah.
But once you get it kind of figured out, you can do it to the meanest of people.
Right. And I tell them all the time too, like whenever I'm interviewing and they're talking to them about that, is like, oh, and you're going to deal with it way less. We never have to deal with it. We have to deal with it like once in a blue moon, not once a night. Well,
I think businesses attract like-minded people, and I've never seen a retail store have as much, y'all call it DHAT, as
what's that stand for, Kevin?
Andrew said it. He knows.
So the dick hardness about triad.
I don't know if that's what it is. Who came up with that?
I brag about that because I've never seen a retail store have that kind of following, to where when I see Ryan's posts on the Define or Triad page, the shirt after shirt after shirt, the hey, this is my favorite, whatever. I've never seen a following like that. But businesses attract like-minded people. So like Velvet Taco, a couple restaurants ago now, they have a sign in their dining rooms that say, "This isn't your mama's house, pick up after yourself." And when I first saw that, I was like, man, I've been doing this a long time. I don't really see people picking up after themselves.
No.
And I was surprised at how many people, I'd probably say 80, 85% of people see that sign, pick up after themselves. And I was really surprised by that, because I go to other restaurants and they just leave a mess.
Right.
But Velvet Taco is the kind of company that attracts those kind of people that think like that. So, if you go into a McDonald's and, their food quality, their culture, whatever, attracts people that, align with those values. You go to, nicer restaurants, it's a lot more rare to come across that behavior than you would at, Popeyes. I love Popeyes, but, it's a clientele base you build.
I do love me some Popeyes.
Man, Popeyes is underrated.
For real. Dude, I didn't realize they had unbreaded chicken, that they had like the blackened chicken.
Yeah.
And it's so good.
Their blackening seasoning, world class. Like, I'd put that on anything.
So good. And like, dude, it's like you get a bunch of protein. It's pretty low calorie for the naked tenders. They're solid.
Kevin's like, man, I haven't had fried chicken in 9 years. Yeah. He's like, Popeyes.
Fucking
fried
Popeyes.
You guys mean air fried chicken? Is that what you're trying to say?
You mean fried without flour, right? Like,
yes.
One thing you talk about a lot is all the different restaurants and all the different aspects of the hospitality industry that you talked about. And that's just a crazy thing to me is how quickly, new restaurants are opening up and, tweaking things and changing things and, bouncing around. It's that whole industry is just, and I've heard from, little bits and pieces from other people in the industry that it's just wild. Like you're working, crazy hours. Yeah. You're constantly doing new stuff. You're bouncing around from different restaurant to restaurant. So I don't know like how common that is for, to work at so many different places, but it just seems like an industry as a whole. And I mean that in the best way possible.
Yeah,
That's crazy to me. It's
The turnover.
I'm laughing because you just described Triad.
yeah.
The turnover in restaurants and hotels averages about 6 months. So your average employee, you got about 3 to 6 months before they get tired, they get burnt out, they make more money at the new restaurant down the street, or because you can plug and play an average restaurant server into any average restaurant, and it's a copy and pastable skill.
Learn the menu.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's all you. I mean, Thomas, had been in the industry, so like right now, Thomas could go bartend anywhere. May not be fast at it, but he has the skills where, hey, once you understand the fundamentals, you could ride a bike 15 years after the last time you rode a bike. So yeah, it's actually super common. And now that, with the current culture that the world has right now, employees are more aware than ever of, hey, I actually don't enjoy working here. And like company culture, I think is becoming more and more vital for just survival, because I'll see restaurants that you could go and make a ton of money at that always have a now hiring sign because it's not an enjoyable place to work.
Yeah.
And COVID really, we lost so many industry folks during COVID because servers and bartenders that made, a lot more money than I make as a bartender. They'll make more than any manager ever. It's crazy the money bartenders can make.
Yep.
Yeah.
They thought I could I could never survive doing anything else because they'll work a Friday night and make $500.
That's why people bartend for so long.
Oh, there's career bartenders and career servers.
Yeah.
I worked at a bar, or it was a restaurant, it was a high-end restaurant, but their bar, it was in a hotel, and they were open from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. And a bartender there would make $400 to $700 a night.
Yeah. Jeez. When I was at Ebbets Field, and it's like an old house turned into a sports bar in Springfield, and they had a back patio, and the back patio was like
patio is money.
Well, we would have on Wednesday nights, we'd have live music out there, and on a live music like Wednesday, if I was on the patio, there'd be 2 bartenders on the patio, and we'd split, and I'd make $700 cash.
Yep, that night.
Splitting. And we made $1,400 in tips that night.
So during COVID, people who thought I could never live off of less because my lifestyle has been, $300 a day for 10 years. During COVID, they were forced to get out. Like I personally had to lay off 52 employees. There was the Wednesday or Friday after the shutdown. Shutdown was like St. Patrick's Day or Monday or whatever.
Where were you working at the time?
Daily Grill. It was inside of a hotel downtown. And yeah, it was 52 employees. We, me and my boss had to sit down, look them in the eyes and say, hey, like we don't have a job for you right now. And I don't know when you'll get it back. Yeah. I know you have a mortgage. I know you have kids. Like, this is all we got.
Right.
So those
my
people,
hands are tied.
Yeah, those people got other jobs. They found 9-to-5s. They got into different industries. They learned new skills. Half of them went back to school for something they had always wanted to do. So post COVID, they never came back. So like right now, restaurants, like I'm thankful for on my end because my salary, grew exponentially post COVID. Because the value was higher. Even places that didn't pay well before will pay top dollar for leadership now because they're so hard to find. It's not even like good leadership. I just need someone to show up to this X restaurant and work these hours and work these shifts. And I see the salaries posted now. Like, man, pre-COVID, you'd have to have 10 years experience to make that kind of money. Yeah. Now it's almost entry level to do that.
Jeez.
So like it worked out in my best interest. And for the staffing side, if you're in the industry post-COVID, hotels, restaurants, the people who got hit super hard during COVID, it's because you want to be. Like no one's there. No, like not as many people are there because it's their only option anymore.
Yeah.
What kind of things you mentioned culture, that pay, doesn't necessarily mean good culture.
Yeah.
And a lot of times can be the opposite. What kind of things create a good culture in the restaurant business? Man,
I got into the culture study a few years ago, and a buddy of mine, I asked, it was when I took over my first GM role, and I asked him, he was a seasoned restaurant operator. I said, man, and I asked him a profit and loss question. I said, how do I get my P&L as tight as possible? Like, I want to make sure that I'm a profitable leader. And he said, focus on the culture, the P&L will fix itself. If you double down on strictly culture only, you'd be surprised at how many other problems fix themselves. So I did a deep study throughout 2018, 19, 20 of learning everything culture books, culture podcasts, whatever. And for me, how I create culture the fastest is probably relentless pursuit. So I never stop pursuing our employees, which means, when you get to a new job for the first time, you're always there early. You dress the best. You're there in a good mood. You're your best version of yourself the first week of your new job. 3 years down the road, you show up and you just woke up and you haven't eaten all day. So your first 15 minutes are spent, eating breakfast or whatever. You get kind of comfortable. Like with any relationship, like with anything else in your life, once you get comfortable, take your foot off the gas. So like what's helped me build culture the fastest and the strongest is every day I show up is to the best of my ability. Is I show up and think, how can I serve you the best? So I'll ask them, hey, what can I do for you right now? Whether it be run the trash, whether it be watch your station while you go on a smoke break, whatever it is, as often as I can. How can I best serve you? And I'm just continually to pursue those employees to where every time I leave a job, I could take 3 to 10 people with me everywhere I go because they know that they're cared for. They know that they're seen. And if they know nothing else, they know that outside of employee, that I care. And that's all they know. They don't care what I know. They care that I care.
Yep. Yeah.
And I could be the biggest moron out there, which half the time I am, but they know I care. And they know that I'll have their back inside, outside the walls. So just pursuit of the team, relentless pursuit in any of your relationships will keep those tighter, stronger.
And that gets passed down too, where if you care about the employees care about the customers.
Oh man, they care about, if you don't do that, you'll never make it. Like if the care doesn't start from the top, they're not going to care about that product.
Yeah.
Well, like you were saying earlier, you're bussing tables.
Yeah. And it's
a huge part.
I took a picture, which I've been meaning to post for a while, but I'm trying to figure out when my start date was. Between March and June of 10 years ago when I started busting tables. And half the reason for my success is I bust tables and take out trash every single day. And I'm getting to the point now where, as my new role as director of operations, I'll be a little bit more administrative. But my goal is to stay as much frontline as I'm able to with my schedule, because like what got me here is what got me here. And I don't want to lose too far sight of that, where I get too far removed from the front line. You start making really selfish decisions when you're so far removed from the operations. For sure.
Well, I think it's, you're saying all this, and one of the things that's really sticking with me, because it's something that I've heard before, and I don't know where I originally heard it, but it's stuck with me for forever. And I even kind of implement it into not just, I think the whole management team and our whole leadership, including ATs and everybody that's our assistant manager role, is called AT, advancement training. But the thing that I look for in interviews, and the thing that I feel like is preached a lot, and I think you display it a lot, and I think Alyssa displays it, and I try to display it, no, Anthony displays it, and Preston, is, I'm not too good for any job. Yeah. No job here or anywhere. I am not too good for anything. And so even when I'm hiring and interviewing people, like one of my questions that I think catches people off guard a little bit, I go, tell me about the job you didn't write down on your resume. Tell me about that. And they're like, oh, well, I just did some little stuff where I I worked the salad station at Panera. And I'm like, what was that like? And they were like, oh, it was like this and like that. And I'm like, man, be proud of that. Because one of the things that happens, and this is something I've tried to do at every job that I've been at, is I'm not too good to do anything here. I'm not too good to not work weekends. Kevin's not too good to come in and help us because we need help, just because he's the owner.
That's all y'all do right now.
Right. Or when I used to GM a nightclub essentially in Springfield. And one of the things, when I got hired in as an assistant GM at the time, and I oversaw a lot of I didn't oversee the bartenders. I just oversaw the floor staff. And one of the big things was the first 4 months that I worked there, I cleaned both bathrooms every night by myself. And if you've never been in a club bathroom at the end of the night, it is every bit of as disgusting as you think it is.
Dude, this club was probably one of the worst too.
Oh, it's a every step.
This was the place where you could go as a college student and get, what was it? It was 2 wells for 50 cents on Thursdays.
2 wells for 50 cents on Thursday night.
That's what it costs.
Dude,
it costs less than, you're almost losing money.
Imagine the demographic you're pulling with that kind of deal.
Oh yeah. And so I would clean the bathrooms, and I remember the owner one time asking me, he was like, man, why do you keep cleaning the bathrooms? And I said, because I want the respect when I ask somebody else to do something. Yeah. If I show them that I'm not too good for this, because I'm not, I can do the base of the base level jobs. That's typically the new bouncer has to clean the bathrooms kind of thing. And I was like, nope, not for a while. It's going to be me. And so, and he was always like, well, the day that I can't do it because I have to do something else. And I go, hey, John, do you mind grabbing the bathrooms tonight? He goes, yeah, absolutely, man. Because he's watched me do it 57 times in a row.
It's so funny you said that. So I wholeheartedly believe, and I'll preach this until I'm blue in the face, but I'm convinced that your team will do what you do and say what you say faster than they'll do what you say. Yeah. So you are the gold standard. You are the walking model. Yeah. We talked about it a couple months ago, is you are the original copy that you're trying to replicate. And, is that copy good enough? Are you good enough at what you do to be able to replicate that, knowing that each time it gets a little bit off, a little bit further off, the ink starts to fade.
Sure.
But when we opened Velvet Taco Norman, it was a huge dining room, one of the biggest dining rooms in the company. And it was white checkered floor. And every single time someone stepped anywhere on a white checkered floor, you see every shoe print, no matter what the weather was like. Yeah. We had gravel parking lot, rain, mud, Norman weather. And every moment of every day, there was just grossness all over this white floor. So our first month there, I mop the floors every single night because I wanted the team to know that, one, I'm not above it.
Right.
But the first time I need someone else to do this dreadful job, they're not going to hesitate.
Right.
So on that 31st day when I chose not to mop the floor, they didn't hesitate to grab the mop and just get after it.
Right.
And not one complained about how big it was. No one complained about how terrible of a job it was. By the end of it, we started splitting it amongst 2 people just to make it faster.
Right.
But after that first 30 days of me mopping it every single night, they were like, hey, I got this. Like, thank you. But no, like we got it from here. We appreciate it.
Right.
So it's something weird that feels weird to ask someone to mop the floor if you haven't done it yourself, if you're not willing to do it yourself. Not to mention, like, you talk about leading by example is, the people that are, the frontline employee and they're looking at you that's, moved up through the industry and has a higher up position and say, hey, how do I get there?
Right.
If you're not mopping the floors, it's like, well, I get there by not mopping the floors.
Yeah.
But if you're mopping the floors, it's say, I get there by mopping the floors.
Exactly. And they have to see you do it and see you do it and they have to see you be it, whatever you're preaching.
Right.
I could actually, I could tell you the moment Kevin fell in love with me. And I saw it in his eyes. It was either our first or second interaction. And it was new. I was newer to Triad, but it was his first time seeing me in Norman. And he was telling me about Sample Triad of 2021, talking about how the truck missed it 2020, or the truck was late and you didn't get your rollout for whatever the new product was. And he was like, yeah, honestly, I'm nervous because it's Saturday. And right now the trucks are leaving California to go to Dallas. And I'm just crossing my fingers they'll be here by Saturday. I said, listen, man, me and you can grab our trucks right now and pick them up from Dallas. Like, if he knew how much I meant that in the moment, I saw it in his face, his confusion. He's like, I don't think I know you that way. Like, hey, I'm Kevin.
You had just this understanding, and I was working with somebody, I think, and like and you came in, and you bought a couple energy drinks or something.
I think it was Preston.
And yeah, that sounds right. And you came in, and I don't know that I think this was the first time I'd ever seen you or like really ever met you, and we were like, hey man, how's Sample Triad, the prep for Sample Triad coming along? And I was like, oh, good. Like this guy kind of knows what's going on. And,
Kevin's kind of famous for those who don't know. He's kind of a social media influencer.
Ooh. Did you know who I was when you came in?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I didn't know that. Thomas is shaking his head, making dumb faces.
My face is always dumb.
More dumb than usual. But you came in, you were asking about Sample Triad, and you kind of like you were asking questions about like new product releases or something, and we started talking about proteins, and you just like understood everything, and like I got to talk about like stuff like kind of the stress of the situation of we're trying to release this new product. It was Define Isolates that year, and it was being made in California.
Yeah,
and it was like it's scheduled to show up like Friday, and the event is the next day, and we put this order. We started this product, like the product development
months,
the earlier that year. So like 9 months ago. And it's like, how is it lined up to be the day before? But it's like, dude, we will do whatever is necessary to make sure we have this product. And then, you brought up like, hey man, if we got to get a truck and get down there. And I was like, man, I've already thought of this. Who is this guy?
I meant it too.
Right.
You apply this everywhere. I hope, with whatever listeners we have, and I hope you apply it as well. But if you want every relationship you have to blossom, always look to what value can I bring into your life. Like I have a new girlfriend, which y'all know about. And I might be biased, but I'm convinced she's crazy about me. And I'll tell you the only secret
Wouldn't be the only one.
The only secret I have is from day one, which I met her almost a year ago now, is I've never hesitated to see what value can I bring into your life day after day. I do it with you two. I do it with all of my relationships. And you do that for a consistent amount of time, the amount of support you'll have during COVID when you're, what should be a record low for you guys. You're getting, record high numbers. You're maintaining business. You're growing because you spent the first several years. Hey, what value can I bring into your life? How can I make your life a little bit better? Not really self-seeking what you can do for me. Because if I continue to give, at some point, there'll be enough people here to support us that I don't ever need to look out for myself.
Right.
It's funny that you say that because it just reminds me of a time when this was years and years and years ago. Chad and I went on the first Define sales delivery. We drove around to all the retailers that essentially carried us, and we were dropping off samples and product, and we were kind of just trying to give more of that personal touch. And I remember we went to one of the retailers, and Chad is notoriously good at what you're talking about. And we were sitting in the back because they were busy and they had customers and whatever. And this is a good note for Ian, as he is now our Define driver arounder. we were sitting back there, and Chad went to use the bathroom, and he noticed that the toilet was like not working correctly, and not 5 minutes later, the manager of the store comes back to Chad and I with the tank off the toilet, fixing it. And then we put it all back together, and it worked great. And we were like, oh, cool. And then we just went and sat back down. Didn't say anything about it because it was just like, whatever. We saw something that needed to get done, and so we did it. And the manager reached out to us after we'd like left and gone to another location in that town. And he was like, did you guys fucking fix our toilet? And we were like, yeah, man. Like we were there and felt like we could be helpful, being useful. Like, why not? You know?
I can't stand networking events because when you go to a networking event, everyone's like, oh, who are you? Like I love, and my career has grown a lot recently, and it's a lot more rare now that I walk into an industry event where like people don't know who I am, because it's such a small town. Like it's not, I'm an average sized fish in a very small pond. So I'll go to, different restaurants, and I'll meet people for the first time, and I'll sit down at the bar, and they'll say, hey, how's your restaurant doing? How's barbecue? Right. Hey, I love your mac and cheese. I'm like, hey, Andrew, nice to meet you. Right. People guys are offering to drive to Dallas for you, and you're like, hey, I'm Kevin, nice to meet you. Yeah. But my biggest priority is what value can I bring into as many people's lives as possible, just because I think it's the right way to live. And you look up one day and you have a huge support group of people that would do anything for you, because that's your first priority is what can I do for you?
Right.
Man, I think there's something to be said too for just like, your own problems just almost start to go away when you, maybe it's just forgetting about your own problems and helping out with other people's.
Yeah. Probably both. Yeah.
I was just thinking about this earlier, but there was one night I think we were in Minnesota. It was Alyssa and I, and it was like a family reunion with a lot of my mom's side of the family. They lived in Wisconsin, and we all met for a long weekend kind of trip, and like got an Airbnb and stayed in this house. It was, on the water, and everybody was drinking like it was, I think it was the last night we were there, and everybody was drinking and had been drinking for a long time. And I was definitely very drunk, and I started like, it was like end of the night, and I'm like, I am not feeling great anymore. Like I've been drinking for way too long today. And Alyssa had been dealing with a headache for a while. And for whatever reason, something just like clicked over in my head of like, let's just make sure, because she's feeling worse than I am. Yeah. Like, I'm not feeling great, but she's feeling like pretty terrible. So like, I was like, let's just focus on her problems. And like, I almost immediately started feeling better.
Yeah.
Like, it was like my problems just almost went away when I just kind of forgot about them. I was like, let's help her out. And I was like, man, maybe like, I was like really drunk, like going to bed with the spins. And I'm like, maybe this is the way to live my life.
It Kevin's aha moment.
It kind of was.
I don't know when Thomas fell in love with me, but I knew when I fell back in love with him. I don't know which one happened first. I saw it in Kevin's eyes. When I offered to drive to Dallas for Kevin, I saw the look in his eyes, and I was like, wow, he's never been offered that much of a value by someone he didn't know before. And for me, that was a normal thing. I didn't know you that well.
It was probably more obvious when I leaned in to kiss you.
That's when I knew that I knew. I thought prior to it, but that was when I knew in my gut. Like, I really feel like this feeling's mutual right now. But for me, it was natural to say, hey, I don't know you very well, but I don't have to know you. Say, hey, I have a truck, and I'm off Saturday, or I'm off Friday. I was off that Friday, which is rare. I was like, hey, man, you can pack up tomorrow and drive down to Dallas. Like, you pay for gas, we'll load up. Like, I'm not afraid.
Heck yeah.
But Thomas, when I realized the feeling was mutual, I had probably bringing them. I couldn't tell you how many times I brought them food, not because I needed anything. Like 95% of my transactions from Triad were to see Preston and Thomas and to buy an energy drink. That was just, I was living at the hotel across the street for several months prior to Velvet opening. I had got relocated from Tulsa, and my move-in date was like 2 months after I moved there. So like 95% of my interactions to this day are say, hey, I want to see my friends and I want to buy something from that cooler. So I had brought in them some chicken, some cake, a couple to-go boxes of tacos, just because they were my friends. And as like me personally, feeding people is what I love to do. It's why I'm in the industry. And there was one day I was grabbing something, and I still use this cup probably every day. And I was looking at the really nice black Triad like shakers,
the steel ones?
The steel shakers. I was like, wow, that's a really nice cup. And he was like, I never told Kevin the story because Thomas gave me something for free. So everyone's finding out on this podcast that he hooked me up. But he's like, hey, I saw you look at that. Take it. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, man, like take the cup. And I was like, wow, I was never bringing him food to get anything out of it. Like I drink one 3D every 3 days or every 2 days. I get it from here. And that's all I'm getting. Like I don't need the 3D for free. It's, the cheapest you can get it in town. But when he did that, I was like, okay. I've made the impact is mutual now because he has a lot more customers he can't give stuff for free to. He could have his favorite customers, but as a business, you really have to separate. Like the free is a gift, and you can't give it out to everybody. Like
right.
Like the reason you support a small business is both you know, like you need each other.
You know what's really funny about that, because I think this is such a testament to who you are. Laurel and I ran into you at Kaizen, and I was like, hey, we're actually going to go check out Velvet Taco today. Like, we're going to go. And it was, I don't know, 11:30 when we ran into you at Kaizen. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, what time are you coming by? And I'm like, probably going to be like 2 o'clock. And he's like, oh, bet I come in at 2 o'clock. That was a lie. I knew we were going at noon. And I purposely lied to you because I knew if I told you prior to me getting, you weren't going to let me pay for food. And
that's why that makes so much sense.
So as soon as we ordered, I sat down and I texted you and I said, hey man, we actually hit here early. Just wanted to let you know that, dude, we're checking it out. I bet it's going to be awesome. He leaves the gym, drives straight to Velvet Taco and was like, you guys already paid? And I'm like, yeah, man, we already paid. He's like, dude, I'm getting cake. And he goes up and he comes back with a couple pieces of cake. And I smirked and I laughed at Laurel because I was just explaining to her that I purposely lied to you on when I was going because I knew you were going to not.
You went straight after. Like you said, hey, we're going at 2 and you went straight from the gym. Yep, and I was doing my gym clothes. I was like, hey, like I pulled into work and like, what are you doing here? I was like, guys, don't worry. Like,
right.
I'm not here for work right now.
And I was like, I know him well enough that he's not going to let me spend money, and I want to spend money.
I don't think you spent money when you went to barbecue.
No, probably
you did.
No,
you did because that girl cut her fingers off. Right before. Like that was the only reason you had to pay for your food.
I planned that out.
Yeah, no, yeah. He was like, hey, use this knife instead of that one. Like this one's special right here.
Yeah.
Unscrewing.
Yeah, exactly. Sharpening both sides of the blade.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that I guess I don't know how common it is, but like I feel like it could be more common of friends wanting to hook other friends up with like, hey, let me take care of the cost of this. Like I'll pay for it or I'll cover it. Whatever, it's on me. But the opposite respect of, hey, no, I want to pay.
Yeah.
Like I know Zach Perez, tattoo artist that's doing my leg. He had to reschedule on me, and there was kind of a misunderstanding at one point, and it was like, man, this is just
some celebrities got involved.
That's a whole crazy story in itself, man. If you haven't heard from him on that, that's like there's like I think there's like I don't know if there's any NDAs or not, but like
probably not the place to talk.
Yeah, but when I finally got to go in for my first session, he was like, hey, let me give you a discount. Like, let me like cut that back. Cause like, we had to reschedule and, I don't like to do that. And I was like, hey man, like I understand the situation that you're in. And like, dude, I came to you because I like your art, you're a customer with us and you're shopping with us and supporting us, man. I want to support you back. Like, dude, please charge me what you normally charge me.
Yeah.
Man, I don't want you to feel like, I don't want there to be any association with like, hey, I helped Kevin out, but I don't make as much money as I do with everybody else. Yeah. It's like, man, like I want your best work. I don't want there to be any kind of like association.
And I just want to support you.
And I want to support you. Exactly. Right. Exactly.
I don't expect a discount.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. I feel like there could be more of that.
Discounts are tough because discounts, once you're given a discount, it's hard to like either not expect it or like, hey, when do I get it? So like I try to
don't do it.
Yeah. I try to avoid discounts because free, like no one really expects, if you get something for free, no one really expects it again. It's like, hey, it's a clear, hey, this is a gift. I can't do this every time. Like I have only one triad shaker, and it's because I always got it for free.
You listen to John Tafford a lot?
Oh yeah, love Bar Rescues. I mean, that's a legend.
Great show, and dude, his philosophies on things are amazing. There's one that has stuck with me forever. Is that
the red napkin?
I don't think so. Maybe not. But there was one. He was on a podcast, and I just saw a little clip of it of why at restaurants he doesn't offer discounts because. You offer a discount on something, someone comes back in and they expect that the next time. And it's like where they maybe appreciate that the first time, they're not going to appreciate it the second time. And then they are mad if they don't get it.
Yep.
But if you can do, hey, let me get a piece of cake on me, or hey, here's some free drink tickets for next time. It's like doing those free things. People appreciate it, but they don't expect it the next time.
Yeah. So his red napkin theory, and I might be butchering it, but essentially it's if you're a first time customer, your server bartender puts a little red napkin on your table and it separates from all the other white or black ones. And that red napkin says, hey, this is your first time. So for their first time, they get a free appetizer. Like, oh, wow, hey, notice it was your first time, whatever. And they'll come back because they got that gift for free. The second time, it's so after the end of that first dinner, he'll give you a card for free. I think it's free chicken dinner he uses. He's like, hey, come in for free this. Come in the second time for a free whatever. Third time, after he has that dinner, they had, chicken and you bought, your date something. He's like, hey, next time come in, dessert's on me. Hands him his business card and it says free piece of pie. And, statistically speaking, once you get that third transaction with anybody, you're almost hooked at that point, especially if you like the product and you're getting that treatment. But that whole theory was that.
It's kind of a way to put a system to what he was talking about on that podcast is, and that's what we talk about all the time too. It's like, it was when it was just me and maybe Thomas or, a couple other people working the stores, like, man, we could all kind of be on the same page of, we all knew the customers and knew kind of when to do those things just off a feel, but we've had to implement more systems like the red napkin where it's everybody knows what to do. We're all on the same page.
It's a standard.
Exactly.
It's easy when it's just you two, or him and Preston knew everyone that walked in.
Right.
But at some point the new guy shows up and it's like, hey, I don't know that this is like maybe the second to last time I was in Norman, or my last time in Norman, I walked in and the new guy asked if it was my first time there. And there's no way, other than my triad hat, shirt, socks, shoes, and wear. Other than that, I'm not gonna tell Kevin.
And my I Love Thomas tattoo.
Yeah, I've told Kevin this story, but I'll never tell him who it was for the employees' safety. But I walked in and it was a newer person, and at the door, I was 2 steps in. They're like, "Hey, welcome in. It's your first time in?" And I'm like, "It's me, Buster, Triad, everything." I'm like, "No, but is Preston here?" Preston comes back, gives me a big old hug.
Right.
With the Triad shirt on, it's a little. Let's use a little sensory acuity.
Exactly. His was muscle memory. He was new, and he was just he was really trigger happy.
Yeah.
So I'll never disclose. I don't even know if I know his name, but I know his face.
I've made worse mistakes.
Exactly.
That, so.
I know his name.
I was a step and a half in the door, and there was no way he could have registered that fast.
Yeah.
Right.
But other than that, any other time, there's no way for anyone to know who anybody is until you're already checking them out.
And that's why we keep customer information. We put you in the system. We get your name. We get some information, and we keep track of your purchase history. We keep customer notes, and it's hard to explain when someone's first in and they're like, "Hey, let me you mind if I put you in the system?" And they're like, "Oh, do I get discounts or deals?" Or it's like, no, but it's kind of hard to explain why we do this.
Yeah.
And
it's more for us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. To be able to provide a better service that not so that I don't if you come back in and it's not me working and you see a brand new person next time and you don't know each other at all, you'll already be on somewhat of the same page because they've got a history of what you've bought, everything we've talked about, or anything we've sent, that sort of thing. So
hotels probably do the best at tracking because they have loyalty programs.
Mm-hmm.
Airlines have it, but hotels I think do it at the highest level. Mm-hmm. So if you stay at a Ritz-Carlton or any nice high level hotel where you're paying $300 to $900 a night or even higher, they track everything really closely. Because if you're a regular at a Ritz-Carlton, obviously you got money, they want to keep you around, but they'll take notes of hey, he was at the bar, he had a diet root beer and a filet mignon and whatever. And at your next Ritz-Carlton,
sounds like a bomb meal.
Yeah, or you had steak and fruit and jalapenos.
Who eats steak and fruit?
I thought it was French toast.
Yeah, it was my meat French toast.
My meat toast.
Yeah,
Meat toast.
They'll leave goodies in your room of hey, here's a 6-pack of diet root beer. Here is your favorite bottle of whiskey. You've had it every time you stay at a Ritz-Carlton. You've had at least one glass for 5 stays now. Here's a bottle on us, Kevin. We appreciate you. Thanks for being so loyal to us. And they'll do that to as many customers or as many clients. I forgot what they call them, guests. Every industry calls it something else.
Right.
They'll do it to as many people as they can. And little things like that, paying attention to the notes. Whenever I'm in a hotel, I check the notes for every loyalty member and say, how can I make this experience memorable?
Yeah.
Because they spend there's people who live in hotels. They work in a different city and spend Monday through Thursday with you, not with their wife, not with their kids, but with you. And it's a rough lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
So what can I do to make this lifestyle a little bit better? Hey, once a month I'll have his favorite bottle of wine in the room, or whenever the game's on, we'll buy the fight or whatever and have it for his room, whatever. It's stuff that you could do to make that experience work.
That's cool.
That is really cool.
So I think hotels do that loyalty. Hey, let's take notes better than any other industry I've seen.
Yeah. It's cool because I've kind of been in a position, as I kind of go and open the new locations where I get to introduce and show a lot of the things that we've been talking about, and some of them being, not being too good for any of the jobs or whatever. But one of the funny things that, because I've got Will now and I've been training Will on to how to essentially run a store, we have Anthony's manager boot camp, but then we also have, essentially your time is with me on the day.
Thomas time.
Yeah. And so one of the ones that is really funny when it comes to things that we're talking about with not being too good for any job or any situation is I didn't have to train Will this. Will was it's doing phenomenal. But it just like came to my head after it happened because we were talking about it. We were talking about, how busy it was and how hard we were having to work and how much we were having to do this and how much we were having to do that. And we were celebrating it. We weren't complaining. We were celebrating about like, oh, this is what gets to happen. This is what could happen. And I was like, hey, just so you know, when you have employees under you, you can never use any of this. Like you can never use that as an excuse for anything because they weren't here. They don't know and it doesn't apply.
They don't care.
They don't care.
They do not care.
It doesn't matter if if you worked every Saturday for 6 years and you've got a brand new employee and you can't be like, well, I worked every Saturday for 6 years. It doesn't matter. That is
the pursuit.
Nothing.
The pursuit can't stop.
This is why we started the podcast, is so I can just talk about it here as opposed to saying it to employees.
Yeah, like, hey, no, I used to work real hard. No, like your work's different now. Like if they
hear that, guys, I do stuff.
If you only knew how hard I work harder now that I'm not in the store.
As he's uploading pictures of the dogs all day,
talking to himself about dogs on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Yeah, I work hard.
The work's different. I'd argue sometimes it's hard. I was talking to Ryan about how it is to work remotely, and Thomas as well, that when you are working from home or working on your own schedule, for me, I almost work more hours because there's nothing to clock out. There's nothing to physically leave. There's nothing to stop. So on a Sunday night, 9:00, I can be doing whatever I need to on my laptop because I don't have to be in store for this. So it's almost harder to manage that, especially for some people like us who enjoy the work that we do.
Yeah.
And, for me, if you work 100 hours a week, then I don't mind spreading out my responsibilities. But, working remotely, having to manage yourself, it's okay. Is there a hard stop? When do I actually leave? Like you're working remote, like not in store 90% of the time that you're not on shift. But when does it stop? When do the drives? When's the day off?
Dude, that was a massive hurdle or massive thing or struggle that I went through for, I don't know, a few months of, when do I start? When do I stop?
Yeah.
And I had to set parameters to it of, I allow myself to work some long days, but I don't let myself feel obligated to work before 9 a.m. or after 9 p.m.
Oh, okay.
If I get my stuff done early and there's not much to do, it's like, cool, I can, be off a little early and not have, can take the afternoon off. And there's sometimes it's the opposite of like, man, there's a lot of stuff to do. And like, man, I'm up to work late tonight. I'm not struggling. But for a period of time, I was going through, it would be 10 o'clock at night. And it's like, man, there's stuff to do. But it's like, do I keep working now? Or do I let myself, kind of wind down and get some rest and try it tomorrow? Like, dude, it was like, that was a huge hurdle for me. And setting those parameters was how I got around that.
Setting boundaries is a lot harder when it's only you affected.
Yep.
Like,
yes.
The reason I'm transitioning from, one job to the next. And at my last job from July until last week, I was working like 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. 5 days a week. And then half a day on Monday when we're closed just to run around and do stuff that I didn't have to be on site for.
Right.
Half of it was because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I was the only manager for both locations. The other half is the control freak of like, hey, I want to see every cocktail go out. I want to see as much food go out as possible. Because if I ever take my eye off the ball there, then mistakes start happening. Like, even our best employee doesn't think the way that leaders think. It's just a whole different glasses. It's a little different vision you have.
Yeah.
But this job now, I'm 9 to 5 right now until the restaurant opens on Monday through Friday. So I'm like, now what do I do? Like I'm working a half day right now. And
right.
I've never being in this new relationship that I'm in, I have never not wanted to be at work until I got into this relationship. And I'm thankful it happened when it did. Because I was telling my new boss who him and I have opened a hotel together and worked together during COVID. And one more time after that, in the 8 years I've been here, I worked for him 3 times now. So I was telling him like, hey man, when the hotel opens, I'm not opposed to working days in the hotel and nights at the restaurant until they both get off the ground. He's like, nope, I'm not even going to let you try that because you do that everywhere you go, and you can't keep running at 120 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Like you're going to burn yourself out, and the fact that you haven't yet is surprising. But he's like, I will hire anything that we need. We'll hire for because I'm not going to let you repeat your pattern. You work 100 hours a week for a year and a half. And then you're sick of it. Like you want to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I've never had someone like
okay.
Yeah,
restrict me from
I've never like a dog on a leash. I've never had someone stop me from doing that and care that much. I was like, you know what? It's funny you say that now that I've met this girl. I actually don't want to work 100 hours a week. He's like, good. Like you've needed that.
Good timing.
But yeah, it was perfect timing that like I've never cared about someone that I cared about more than work.
Yeah.
That was a new part. I've been in other relationships over the last 7 years, but it was never more important to me than work.
Yeah.
And that's where I knew, okay, I got to transition to something different.
Yeah.
So when this job opportunity happened, they're like, yeah, you'll be 9 to 5. You have a company card, your own office. It's like, man, maybe this is the time to.
Yeah.
So the 9 to 5, is that even remote, or is that you have to be at the hotel or restaurant?
It depends on like what I'm doing. Like there's some stuff I will have to be on site for, but I mean, there was like yesterday, what is today? Monday? So Friday, my day was spent half in meetings and half just doing whatever I wanted. And I had a 3-hour lunch break and I left an hour early I left 2 hours early for this. So, that kind of stuff I can't do when my work is 100% on site.
Yeah.
Like making food, you cannot do that from home.
Right.
Making drinks, you cannot do remote.
How you liking it so far?
Man, I love it. It's a whole different animal. It's a great company that is doing some really fun things. And none of them, which is, it's good and kind of scary. None of our food and beverage team has ever really opened a restaurant before. And this is number 6 for me. So I'm like, man, it's a little intimidating that like I'm the only one that's done this before, but they're all seasoned like industry veterans and are, 20 years older than me, if not, in that 15 to 25 year older than me range. So there's not that much of a learning gap. Like, hey, I probably have a few more opening weeks than you do, like what that opening week looks like, what grand opening looks like. Other than that, I mean, you were a bartender longer than I've even been in this industry. Yeah. So like, there's a lack of knowledge gap that it's not as bad as I thought it was because they're industry veterans.
Yeah. No. That was one of the things that was important for me even whenever I stepped out of the store for a while and was doing some other stuff was like setting those time parameters. Like a big thing for me was like starting at 9 and then not letting myself work past 10. And so it was nice only having that 1 hour of work and then I had the rest of the day to kind of just do whatever I wanted.
Ryan told me he does the same thing. He gets all of his work done before lunch and then just doesn't work the rest of the week.
That's right.
Yeah, he schedules every post out, has all the content edited by.
That's what you meant by 9 to 10, right?
Yeah, it's tough.
Andrew did have to one up me with I was 9 to 9. He's like, I was 9 to 10.
we close at 9. It takes an hour to get out of there.
Yeah.
So
I get that.
I don't recommend it for anybody, but it was my only real drug was the busyness, the work, the love of the adrenaline. So like there's all kinds of addictions, whether it be sugar, whether it be social media, and there's some that are a lot more acceptable. Hustle and grind and overworking is glamorized and thankfully there's a movement now of like, millennials and Gen Z not wanting that lifestyle.
Yeah.
But all of our previous bosses were that 80s and 90s and early 2000s leaders where, you work as hard as you can for as many hours as you can. You climb that ladder as fast as you can and then you've made it. And then you make it and you realize that it's empty.
Yeah.
And it's not what you thought it would be. And that's why they're alcoholics. That's why the divorce rate is so high. That's why, I was an old boss of mine and I won't name from where, but he'll never hear this. He was a super high level executive at a company I worked for, making I think between $200,000 and $300,000 a year, and had literally it all. Like whatever it is, he had it all. He had the wife, the family, the cars, everything you could ever imagine. And right now, at this point in time, he is walking around homeless downtown Tulsa because he let the greed and let the it get to him. He's been divorced for several years. He's lost 100 pounds, and he is a skin and bone figure walking around downtown Tulsa, which is a city he used to run.
No way.
And it is the biggest, I was talking to a friend of mine about it, and it is the biggest fall I've ever seen from someone I knew personally. Like, hey, text you on Christmas. Hey, I've worked for you for years. Like
that is a massive difference.
And it started with like, being a high level executive. Alcoholism is super popular in the, ages 40 to 70-year-old men that grew up in that era. Like they make it all. And then they have a bottle of bourbon every night of the week when they're traveling, whatever it is, try to fill that void. But his fall was the highest to low I've ever seen from someone I knew personally.
That's
to
wild.
where like I heard he was walking around downtown right now. I'm still looking for him. But that shows that he had no real support. He had no real friends, no real loyalty at those empty networking relationships.
Yeah.
And when
they were for business.
They were all networking, hey, self-seeking relationships.
Yeah.
And you don't realize that it is empty until you get it. And you're like, man, it's actually not where it's at.
That's been one thing. It is tough, man, when you are driven and you want to create something great and be the best in your industry is man, you got to be able to be willing to work harder than the next guy in your competition. And it's hard to see whatever the rest of your life when you're so hyper focused like that.
Yeah.
But that's one thing that I don't know what clicked over in my mind for. There's probably a couple of things I could point to, but having to take a step back as frequently as possible of like, what does the end goal look like? Like, I know, what we want out of business, but like when we get there, what's the rest of my life look like?
Yeah.
Do I have any friends?
Yep.
And that's been, a hard lesson that I've had to learn, especially when, it was the two partners and Thomas here is I think I got overly hyper focused on the end business goal of man, I was kind of starting to lose friends, and it was impeding on those relationships. That was a hard lesson learned in it, but that is a constant reminder of when I get too much in that mindset of like, hey, take a step back. You gonna have any friends at the end of this?
Right.
You know what? Y'all should write a book. Whether it be a memoir or a leadership book, but the book should cover define success. And because you can't I over the last 2 years, I have recently like better defined what success looked like for me, and I've been doubling down this last year. Like now that I've achieved everything I thought I wanted, the role I wanted, the being able to open a concept completely from scratch, everything on that menu I either made or had a huge part in, did everything I've ever wanted. And you get both articles about talking about how amazing you are and how innovative it is for this concept. And I'm like, it's really empty. So over the last year, I've been thinking, okay, what do my friends say about me in my absence? What does my family, what do they think about me? Those closest to me, instead of trying to do it for the Instagram or the clout, what is my significant other? How does she speak about me when I'm not there?
Right.
How do the people that matter? Do I have friends? Like, do I have friends that know me and say, hey, you know what? He worked himself to death, or hey, he's a great guy. Like I would, drive 2 hours to pick him up from the side of the road for that guy.
Right.
Because he would do it for me.
You don't want to see that end success. You don't want to be at that end goal if you don't have all those things around you. Is it really worth being there?
Is it worth?
I'd rather be 50% there and still have some friends and a wife.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Is it worth your soul at that point?
Yeah.
So when you define success for yourself, and it's different for everybody. Some people might just want a Lamborghini and never have a family. That's okay.
Right.
But you got to define success before you achieve it. And the last 12 months I've spent doubling down on, what do the people that matter the most to me think about me, how they feel about me? And if I have that success, then I'd walk away from it all and live a lot more quiet lifestyle if I got to keep those things.
Yeah. Well, that's, you say that, and like I say this all the time, but I've said this before, but some of the most, I would say the most valuable thing or the most fulfilling thing that I get when it comes to like work things is Laurel explaining to me when she's proud of me. Like it is.
It hits home.
It is, right? Like, it's great when you get, success and
the
people.
attaboys.
Yeah. And like people that you work with or whatever, or like thankful for things that you do. But
you see numbers.
Yeah. Like all of those things are great.
The successes.
We have a record day, but it is, I was out to eat with Laurel the other day and we were kind of talking and, we were just talking about like weekend shifts and stuff like that. And she was like, you're such a good person. Like you work so hard and you care so much for the people and like you will self-sacrifice yourself so quickly to make sure that they get to, and these are her words, not mine, but like making sure that they get to like do the things that are meaningful to them and like give them a life. And it's like she's like, I'm just very proud of you. And it was like that meant more to me than like any number we've hit, anything that we've ever done.
That's a really cool that she has that kind of response or has that mindset towards it, because it's not just a sacrifice that you're making. It's a sacrifice that you're having to make on she's making, that you're having to make on her behalf. Is I know I always struggle with that of hey, I'm willing to jump in and help out wherever the company is needed. Again, going back to the mindset of like I'll do anything for one customer kind of situation. But when I do that, it takes away from time with Alyssa, which is pretty limited as it is.
Right.
So,
I mean, it's one of those things that the people who see you at your worst, for them to think highly of you means more than any customer ever could. Because your significant others will see you in every way, shape, and form every season, and at your absolute, like when you're just not your best version of yourself. Right. So for their thoughts to be still high of you when you've seen my lowest, I mean, it speaks volumes compared to what your buddies who you see once a month in the store think. Like it's cool to be appreciated, and your guy friends always have their role. But the people who have seen every version of you, like what do they think and what do they talk about you? What do they say about you if they know you'd never find out?
Right. No, for sure. Well, and that's like some of my favorite things that happen too, even when we're talking about like customers and how customers talk about us. My favorite thing is we had a customer, Jen, come in the other day and explain this to us. She shops with us quite a bit, but she just kept being like, everybody who works here is so nice. Everybody is so nice. And then she just like kept going back to that. And like that, I was so thankful for that because that is the thing that like I get my sense of pride from is like how nice is everybody that like you experience.
My favorite reviews are, and I tell the team this every single day, is my favorite reviews are the ones about them.
Yeah.
Like the ones that say the staff is incredible.
Yep.
Because that I didn't teach them. Like I'd love to, like, you know, that margarita recipe is mine. I don't make it, so I'm glad they're executing that recipe at the highest level. But for them to say, hey, food is great, atmosphere is cool, but their staff is next level. I mean, that's a y'all thing. Like I made one decision one time, and it was to say yes to hiring you. It took me, I don't know, 4 months to build that opening team and a lot of no applicants.
Right.
But for them to say, hey, that team is incredible.
Yep.
That is my highest achievement.
Always.
Is like how well is the team doing, especially when I'm not there.
Oh, yeah.
That's a hugely celebrated thing at Triad of when someone gets, or when a store gets a 5-star review and it has
A name.
Name listed on it.
Yeah.
We always bring it up in meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, back to the Laurel thing, and I'm getting kind of risky with my stories here, but for confidentiality, a while back I was at an awards ceremony, and it was a big corporate event. And you know, at the time, the company I was with was up for a few awards, and one of the awards that was towards the end of the show, and I was with with a few of the team at the time, and they had a Citizen of the Year for this market. I won't say where. And one of the events or one of the awards was Citizen of the Year. And when the guy won, I looked at the team and we looked at each other and we're like, wait, the guy that comes in and like harasses the bartenders after he's been drinking all night, the guy that comes in, he's been a regular for months. And it took me 6 months of knowing him that he had a wife because of the way he talks about women and the way he talks. He was on the verge of, he actually hadn't been in probably a month or two prior to the award ceremony. But the next time he came in, I was gonna tell him that if he didn't straighten his act up, he couldn't come in anymore. Like he was that bad. Oof. So towards the end of his time there, like as a customer, he mentioned his wife, and I was like, I've known you for 6 months. We're friends on Facebook. I didn't know you had a wife.
Jeez.
So whenever he won Citizen of the Year, me and the team looked at each other, who all the employees at the time were like, man, is that award worth it? Yep. When like I know your home life can't be that great. And sure enough, the next week he came in and said, man, I kind of feel guilty. I won that award. The whole area that we live in thinks I'm this great person. He's 9 beers deep prior to walking in. He's drinking a soda with us. And he's like, man, I really feel bad about this. Like it feels fake. And I'm like, yeah, is all of that, that's a pretty cool award. Citizen of the Year for an entire city.
Yeah.
And is it all worth it when you lay your head down at night? Like, hey, I'm not really that guy.
Yeah.
Eesh.
So that one was like a real key indicator of like, what does your wife think about you?
Yeah. Right. Oh, for sure. And I think it's cool for us when we talking about culture and talking about, awards obviously in a different way. But, we did our inaugural awards, not this year, but last year. And having those inaugural awards was super cool. And I won one, Ryan won one, our like inaugural year of doing it. And
Kevin won Employee of the Year.
Yeah.
That was the first 5 years.
Yeah.
It felt like it was
self-voted Employee of the Year.
When you're the only one.
Yeah. And none of which were as cool as giving them out this year.
Yeah.
None of them were as cool as giving them out this year.
It's different, man.
So much.
That story it shows how important it is to make sure you pick the right people to get those awards, though.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because otherwise it starts to mean nothing.
I almost think from a distance, and I don't want to say y'all take advantage of it, but I wish y'all would be able to step into someone else's shoes for a week and see the level of employees and the level of service y'all give consistently. Because it's y'all standard. It is the expectations, and your worst employee could be the employee of the month anywhere they go.
Yep.
And I think like everyone sitting in this room, I admire Ryan a lot. I think Ryan does everything he does at a super high level. I did a story the other day, and I asked for suggestions on new earpods or AirPods or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he was the only one that said the clanging of the weights in the gym. And I was like, Ryan is an animal. Everyone else said Beats or AirPods, and I was like, Ryan is a literal machine. But I think some of the best.
I also said gossip.
I knew I was missing something.
He gave you an actual recommendation.
He said gossip and the clanging of weights, and I was like, man, and I'd probably say 7 of your employees responded with either Beats or AirPods.
Hey,
and so to see Ryan's, I was like, yeah, that guy's different. But I think everyone here can say that some of the best decisions they've ever made is the jobs they turned down. Mm-hmm. And I think all of us here could do something more lucrative than what we're doing for somebody else, but at the cost of everything, at the cost of your soul, at the cost of knowing that you're not proud. There's a particular fast food chain that's been in my DM or my LinkedIn DMs for 3 years, offering me crazy money. And I send a picture to my friends every time as a joke, like, hey, they're offering, like, they keep bumping the pay every year by, 10 grand. And they know me enough to know that there is not a single dollar amount that would get me to sell my values. So, I think what I wish y'all could step out of being Triad to see it, because I'm like, man, I would take any of those employees anywhere. There's not even like your worst employees. Say, hey, bring them over. They could do, like, at their worst, they could do a level that I would be proud of in the hospitality industry. So it's almost an expectation for y'all that I don't know how often y'all think about it. Because on the outside, I'm like, man, people work years and decades to build company culture that all of your stores have.
Well, I can tell you it's something that we talk about all the time.
Good.
Because it is, we talk about not taking our people for granted, because we did this one time where it was like, show of hands anybody who couldn't make more money somewhere else. Right. Like and not a single hand went up, because everybody could make more money somewhere else. And it's like, we can't take advantage of employees because we have overqualified people. Our people are vastly overqualified for the position and the pay that they have.
At every level.
Right. And so, for us, we have to be constantly talking about opportunities. We have to constantly be talking about treating people right, creating the right culture, doing all of this. And we'd want to do it anyway. But we know at any moment, if we didn't have all of those things, like, easily half the staff could not be there, because what would it be worth it anymore?
When they're constantly, like, you getting offers for other jobs, or just having the opportunity of working somewhere else for more pay. But in the second that the culture isn't top notch, or the opportunities aren't realistic,
you quit pursuing that culture. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I don't want to be there anymore. But if we can keep those things, we can, like, and genuinely actually offer these opportunities and more pay and advancement through the company. That's where we not only keep the people but keep the culture.
I'm convinced that the main reason that y'all will get to a store 4 is not because Kevin wants a store 4, but because y'all want more opportunities for your people. Like, when I'm looking at when I hear y'all talk about store 4, I'm like, man, I know these guys, and I know their hearts, I know their minds, and I know that 8 years ago, how long has it been now from when you opened?
Like
7.5.
approaching,
so 7.5 years ago, when this was like, hey, we're coming up on opening day of Quail Springs. I know store number 4 was nowhere in the master plan, and now you're like, man, we have so many leaders, we have so many high caliber employees. If we don't open a store 4, then we're going to lose great people. So we have to keep the ball rolling.
That is 100% why store 4, there's things on my to-do list to make sure we're taking those steps towards it. And we want to be patient with it. We're still just making sure UConn's getting up off the ground.
And
we just offered opportunities, everybody that's been around for a while, and got some new guys that are putting in the time. So we've got a little bit of grace period here, but we want to make sure that we're not caught off guard of like, oh crap, we've got people that have been waiting for opportunities for probably a little bit too long and nowhere to put them.
They felt neglected. They felt like unseen.
Exactly. No, you hit the nail on the head when you said that. Yeah, we're opening store 4 for the employees more than the company or myself.
I've spent enough time with y'all to know your intention, and I think intentions is huge, because I'm not the best at executing my intention, or I'll say something like, hey, that's not what I meant. Like, understand my heart when I say this, because there's some stuff that'll come off as brash or like self-seeking or whatever. And I'm like, if you understood like what I was thinking and my heart when I said that, it would sound so different to you. So I've spent enough time with you in these conversations in this room to know that when you talk about store 4, I'm like, man, they're gassing growth to keep the culture and to keep the team growing.
How do you know me better than I know me?
It's you text me every time you drink too much. Kevin does this thing where he gets drunk and offers me jobs.
Yeah.
So that's
will you accept one?
That's usually when I get to know somebody, is when they're pouring their heart out to me after 11 tequilas.
We're only 11. That's not bad for us.
We're the ones sliding into his LinkedIn DMs offering 10 grand more for your
fast food. Yeah. Our food's already made as fast as you can.
It's Raising Cane's, by the way. Yeah. Raising Cane's has not stopped.
Wow.
So I didn't know that Raising Cane's does 5 to 7 mil a year in chicken strips. Like Chick-fil-A does that as well, but they have a bigger menu and they're Chick-fil-A. But Raising Cane's, on the other hand, like everyone knows them, and
just chicken strips,
it's literally just chicken strips.
Yeah, like their sandwiches, chicken strips on a sandwich.
They're building their biggest store in the company in Norman. On campus.
Oh wow!
And I didn't know. I went to Cane's there regularly when I lived there. It's in my probably once or twice. I actually met my girlfriend at Cane's. I was a regular there, and she delivered the best service I had ever gotten in a fast food restaurant when I met her. And that's where I was like, man, I want to hire her, like something special. Yeah. Her. But sidebar.
The fact that you look for customer service in a girlfriend.
I didn't know that until I met her. Like, I realized that I have a type, and I'm like, oh shoot, I like personable people. I like people that. So she took my order, and I walked away. And guys are guilty of this, and I'm thankful that none of y'all will ever really think this. But I walked away, and for a quarter of a second, I was like, man, she might be into me. And then I was like, no, that's her job. Every bartender in the world is trained to make you feel important, make you feel special. And I promise you, 95% of the time, they're not flirting with you. I've been in the industry long enough to know that not 10 times out of 10, there are times where, hey, she really thinks you're cute and you're a regular customer for hers, whatever. Happened with me. But 9 times out of 10, they're not flirting with you. Their job is to make you feel seen, important, and make you feel special. So I sat down, I watched her take 40 more orders as I'm eating my food, and I'm watching every person think that same thing. Every guy is like, oh yeah, like I think she's into me. Even girls are like, wow, she was super friendly. Like I think I'm her favorite customer. And she had zero idea who these people were. It was just instinctive.
She even tricked you. You've been in the industry for a decade.
That's when I knew something was special. I was like, man, for a second she got me. I walked away. I was like, no.
Are you sure you guys are dating, or you just go still see her at Raising Cane's?
I spent way too much money at that Raising Cane's. It took me 4 months to
Andrew's girlfriend. It's just the lady working the counter at Raising Cane's.
It took me 4 months to get her number, and it was a crazy pursuit story. I'll tell y'all one day. But
it's crazy they let you in Raising Cane's anymore.
that one doesn't anymore. Yeah. She no longer works there, and that one no longer lets me in. So my face is on the wall next to the dog. It's like, hey, do not let this guy in. Right. But the Raising Cane's does $5 to $7 million a unit off of chicken strips. And I mean, the strips are average. The sauce is the name of the game for them. So they're the company that was like every year after year, they're like, hey, are you sure? Hey, this opportunity is open again. And they pay crazy well, because what they don't offer is job satisfaction, soul, changing menu, passion into the food. It's like, hey, you show up and you make sure the chicken goes in the fryer and out of the fryer. Yep, that's your whole job.
Yeah. And it makes sense. I love the simple menu. I love that model. Like I'm super interested in simplifying things. It just makes it really cool to like not have to worry about like a number of different things. But when you're working that in a day to day, as you know,
monotonous.
It could be tough.
Dave's Chicken perfected it. They said, you know what? Let's do what Raising Cane's does, but better, with a really cool looking restaurant. You go to Dave's Chicken, Dave's Hot Chicken, in every city, you get a line out the door every day from every Dave's. They're blowing up right now, and there's
one here now.
Yeah, I love the one here. I come every time I'm in town, and the food is good. Is it worth the line out the door? I don't know. That's debatable. But they have just chicken strips and a chicken sandwich. They have some good sauces, and their menu is very simple. And I wish more companies would do a few things at the highest level than offer 37 menu items and it just be, mediocre.
Quick tip on Dave's: order online and you just go to the window outside and don't have to wait in line.
Right, that one. I spend 30 minutes in line every time I go.
I've never spent the time in line.
Is it an app? Just on the website?
I just ordered through online. I have no clue where I'm ordering through. I literally type in Dave's Hot Chicken on Google and it says order online.
I just Google Dave and I give my money to Dave.
Yeah. Have you had it yet?
And then there's chicken at the window. It doesn't have my name on it, but
yeah, always give it to me. So.
Yeah, if you run fast enough, all food is free. That's right. I don't care where you go. Right. Like if you can get out there quick enough, everything's free.
Will's been talking a lot about Dave's Hot Chicken.
It's good, man.
Yeah.
It's
I haven't tried it yet.
If you've had Torchies, if you've had there's other, like even Fuzzies. There's a few like niche concepts that do one thing at a really fun atmosphere and at a decent level. And Dave is one of them. Like you go into every store, is super cool. It's really trendy, very Instagrammy. The food is good enough to get you back, and they do a few things really well. And they're one of the hottest chains in the game right now. Wow. From just seeing, hey, let's do what Cane's does, but cooler. Let's modernize it.
We're in the market for it, man.
Absolutely.
I love that hyper focus on just being the best at one thing. And we talk about that a lot of but that's why we don't sell gym equipment. We don't sell smoothies. We don't do personal training. We are going to do our best to be the best at supplements and helping people purchase the right supplements for them. If we start to worry about other things, we get worse at that.
Yeah. And at what cost? Like you're never going to sell enough smoothies to justify losing the quality of
Yeah. And everybody's got different parameters of what that hyper focus looks like. But it's an interesting concept.
So what you said before, though, it is like, what is the lowest quality you're willing to give?
Yeah.
And we aren't at a point where, like, and I don't know if we ever will be, but like, we're not at a point where we're comfortable with the quality that comes along with us also doing something else.
I mean, I love the story of the warehouse y'all transition, where you had some supplements that were kind of out aging, and you're like, y'all are tasting it, and that is where the defining moments of your standards is, hey, I taste this and it tastes like 75% normal, throw it away. Like, what is that number? And it's different for every company. It's different for situations. There'll be times where, this salsa is not a 10 out of 10, but it's an 8.8, and I'm happy anything above 8, whatever that is, whatever that number looks like for you. And depending on the item.
If your number is 10 every single time, you're throwing out 9 out of 10.
You're getting reckless with, but if you can keep that, within passing, whatever that passing looks like for you. For McDonald's, it's like a 3, 4, for
everybody's got their parameters.
Exactly. Right. So when I heard that story of y'all throwing out the supplements, you're like, man, it doesn't really go bad. It just tastes off. Because y'all knew selling one bad or off tasting tub can make that person never want to buy a product again. And that's where, like, hey, do we throw away thousands of dollars of inventory at the expense of our values? Those are tough. When you're a small business, losing that much inventory is where most people compromise. And that's where you see the decline of, it happened to, they call them the neighborhood restaurants, but, Applebee's and Chili's and Red Lobster back in 1995 to 2008, it was their prime time. And you could not get a seat at an Applebee's in 2004 in any neighborhood. Right. And then, like, you know what? Let's stop hand cutting these patties. Let's go into a store-bought patty. And then you fast forward, hey, you know what? Let's go into a frozen patty. Fast forward, you know what? Let's do a frozen everything.
Frozen wing. Frozen. Everything's
you make a small compromise year over year over year.
Everything's an anytizer.
You look up and you're closing.
Save a little bit now, but lose out on everything in the future.
Is it worth it?
Right.
But you have to find, everybody's got a different line though.
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing to say, hey, this is the right where spot for the line.
It's the hardest thing.
Well, and it's super interesting too, because we've referenced this in multiple ways, but we talk about culture, and I think that is another testament to culture, where we have had, and I have had conversations, but it is the testament to, like, nope, this is not our standard. And when something is not our standard, we do not do it. And I think that even is, like, to our employees is super important too. We're talking about culture. Whenever, you're talking about, or I was talking about with your bartenders, knowing is something slightly off, that it is preferred for them to dump it out. Not like you're not going to get in trouble. Not like I'm not going to, I'll maybe bug you about it a little bit. No, it is preferred for you to do it this way. I think us showing, again, it's just like with customers. One of the things that we always preach when it comes to customers is be unexpectedly cool around every corner. Around every corner you turn, and there's something else that, like, we were hopefully thinking of already to be, like you're talking about the hotels, where it's like you open your door and it's like, hey, by the way, we ordered the fight for you, and there's a bottle of wine sitting here as well, because I know it's your favorite. I know you're a UFC fan, like, whatever. It's behind every door, around every corner, you're unexpectedly cool.
That customer will never stay anywhere else.
Amen.
Like, when you do with that thank you card, Ryan sending me to, and it's different for me because I'm hyper aware of these things. Sure. You can't send everyone to GNT or to your competition or whatever. I wouldn't call it competition, to a similar model of business. You can't give everyone one free shirt. I told Kevin the other day, my least favorite triad customers are the ones who wear the shirt and, like, don't, like, apathetic about it.
Yeah.
I'd rather, I don't mind people who don't know because I get to tell them about it. Right. The D-hat people are my favorite because they're my people. But I'll go to the gym in Tulsa and I'll be like, hey, man, I like your shirt. They're like, and somebody gave this to me. I don't even know where I got this from. I'm like, oh, man, you missed out. Like, you didn't catch, like, they probably gave it. Maybe they didn't. But you didn't fully understand the experience. And, like, an apathetic customer is almost worse.
Right.
But those, like, loyalty moments, because I'm so hyper aware of it, you giving me that shaker cup, Ryan sending me somewhere else, knowing that he makes more, like, the store makes more money if I buy something from him. Giving me that shirt anyway, just when I just bought a 3D. Right. Those things right there. Now I own 75 shirts. Yeah. And, loyalty is my middle name. And you don't know that when you're dealing with that customer for the first time. Right. You don't know that impact.
Right. And so us trying to be as cool as we can for customers, I think it almost works in, like, a slightly different way with the employees. Obviously, we want to be cool to them as well. But I think it's behind every door, around every corner. maybe a good way to put this, and I talk about this in the interview a lot, is my favorite thing about Try It and my favorite thing to talk about in the interview is that in front of the curtain and behind the curtain are the exact same thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't change. And so around every corner, around every turn, when a situation presents itself, when we hold our standard, it shows again, nope, we are not willing to do something that we don't consider to be the right move for our customers, for our employees, forever. Our standard is here and our standard stays there. And you can be confident knowing that every turn that you make within this corridor of working here is that you will constantly see us maintaining that standard.
That is tough because not everybody, like you said, not everybody appreciates that though. And it's one of those that, man, it's one of my favorite things to do is, okay, we provide a little bit better customer service because of X, Y, and Z. And it's like, man, we're already 3 steps ahead of our competition, but like, screw it, man. Let's do 10 more steps.
Oh yeah.
Like, let's just,
overkill.
For lack of better terms and like a little gruesome, but like, let's step on the throats, man.
Yeah.
Like, let's like do everything better.
I mean, look
everything possible. And you're doing, and you put all this effort in, and you're still going to have some people that don't appreciate it, don't even realize.
Right. But it's, for us, I think it's a cool thing because we always talk about the tax of things. And I think that it is the tax, is the people who don't appreciate it.
Yeah.
But I'd rather do it 10 out of 10 times and get my 9 loyal customers and then there's going to be one who just didn't care. And well, that's the one that really does like bum you out.
Yeah.
You have to ignore that. You have to just move through it.
It feels personal.
Right. And it does. And so it's like, no, the thing is do 10 out of 10. We were working the other night and a guy came in for a product that we were out of stock on. The company that makes it was out of stock on it, right?
Hard.
So while Kevin is talking to him, helping him get some samples and looking up some similar things, in fact, showing him and giving him samples of a discontinued product because it was the most similar thing, I'm standing on the other side of the counter, literally calling other places to see if they have it in stock. And you know what? That guy's been back 3-4 more times since that.
Yeah.
And just has like, he's like, man, I almost went to X, Y, and Z. And then I was like, oh shit, Try It's around the corner. That's where I'm going.
Nice.
And it's like, you're always it's great when you have those, but it's being able to look past the people that don't appreciate the hard things that you do, because it's easy to lose motivation when those happen. But when it is 1 out of 10 or even less, sometimes you can't let that one stick with you.
I got an email in January that the Tulsa World food editor had eaten at our restaurant and that our article will be coming out within the next week or so. And at first I was like, oh shoot, I didn't know he was coming. No one knows what he looks like. They're supposed to be discreet.
Wow.
And for a half second I was like, man, I kind of wish I would have known he was here. And then for the other half of that second on, I was like, man, this is the highest caliber team I've ever put together. I'm not even kind of worried about it.
Yep.
Like I was I did not lose 1 minute of sleep because I was like, well, no matter when he came, I know that this team, in my absence or not, is putting out the highest level product that we're capable of putting. And I mean, he gave us a raving review. Like of all 5 tacos he tried, he said the potatoes in one of them were a little overcooked, and everything else was like great, awesome, innovative, different. And I knew at any point in time you could show up, and I felt so comfortable with how strong the team was that I didn't care if I was there, and I prefer that they didn't know. That way they don't screw it up and try to change character. Right. They try to do something extra or out of the ordinary.
You you feel like you got to change the game when someone else is like, no, man, stick to your guns. Like, you know the playbook.
Exactly.
Just follow the playbook.
And I was so comfortable with that when I saw the review. I was like, yeah, that's what I expected. Like, I wasn't even thrilled. I was like, no, it's exactly what we worked for. And that's the expectation.
That's the coolest thing that I have going for me right now is like having 2 like ATs as my 2 coworkers right now when it comes to UConn in a brand new store. 3 months in, I'd like, besides making the schedule, it's like I couldn't even tell you who's working half the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, because it doesn't matter. Like I have full confidence in both of them to be going above and beyond and be doing like absolute killer work all the time.
Well, in this stage of a new store, it's crucial to make sure every interaction, every time. There's 2 difficult parts of opening a new business. It's making sure you execute at the highest level right out the gate, because if not, those first interactions won't come back. And then making sure you execute at the highest level every day for the rest of the time that business is open. Right. Because the moment you stop is when, I went one time, and it starts to become slowly but surely game over.
Yeah.
Yeah. You take a break on one and it's a lot easier to take a break on the next one.
Exactly.
Right. As soon as you cross that line, it becomes acceptable.
I tell people with new restaurants now, I've accidentally become, a restaurant opener, which was never the goal. But when someone opens a restaurant, they always text me for something. And I'll tell them like, hey, there's 2 difficult parts of opening a restaurant. First, the pre-open, which is getting all your ducks in a row, making sure that you're prepared for everything, contingencies are set in place, whatever. The second hardest part about opening a restaurant is keeping it open.
Yeah.
Like that's where, 70% of restaurants fail, is keeping it open. That's where,
Right.
Once you find that routine of, hey, we have a strong team and we're doing the best that we can. All right, keep your foot on the gas for the rest of your life, or until you sell it, whatever that looks like. But you never take it off. And
Thomas is kind of a supplement store opener.
Yeah,
for real though.
You opened it's
every store.
Yeah, what's man? It's if you kind of look at it, man. I've opened probably 1.5, and you have opened 3. So
right. And that's and was there for the beginning really of the first one too.
Yeah.
But it's you don't kind of, those positions kind of fall to us lucky souls, but it's something that it is a unique skill to learn, but it's super valuable. And I was having a conversation with Kaylin about that the other day, and she was talking about her future and goals and stuff that she has, and I was like, girl, all you're doing right now is just building your resume with skills. Skills that a lot of people don't have. Like, you are making yourself, and this is what I tell people this all the time, whenever one of the skills that I've had in life is like that I seem to interview pretty well, like receiving interview. And one of the things that I've always kind of stated, especially when I was trying to get like promotions or whatever, but is being very like, if I'm not the obvious choice, tell me what to do next time to be the obvious choice.
Yeah.
Like, help me build my resume, get me there. If I
could have 1 minute with anyone wanting a promotion, I would tell them that since the moment you started, your resume is every day you show up to work. Like, I know you joined Quail Springs 3.5 years ago, and you think, man, there's not really a whole lot of room for growth. So you kind of, you stay on your heels. You're not super focused, but like, you want to be a manager. If there were a spot open, you would take it. Yeah. And then now your store is in, and you're like, man, like, now you're working extra hard. You're showing up early. Hey, what extra credit can I do?
Yep.
It's like, man, you went,
it's already too late.
You went 3 semesters, like, kind of goofing off. There isn't really an amount of extra credit you can do to get you there, because you've been interviewing for this job since we hired you.
Yeah.
And that's your resume.
We don't look at your GPA over the last 6 months. We look at it since the day that you've been here.
Exactly. Right. And internal promotions, they don't, if you don't, and not everyone knows they want to promote until after the fact. But like, the moment you realize that, you wouldn't mind growth, that's got to be your focus every single day, no matter how long that takes. Yeah. And if it's not with them, then maybe someone else walks in the door and offers you that job somewhere else.
Right.
But it's like, your resume for an internal promotion is every day you clock in.
That's right. And it's like, and I'm telling her, I'm like, look at the benefit that you're getting. You're getting experience. You work at Quail, you work at UConn. You are learning what it takes at a pace that I think is very manageable for, Kaylin works super hard.
Yeah.
But Kaylin is, very focused on the things that she does, and change can be tough. But being able to go to somewhere like UConn, especially part-time at UConn right now, and kind of adjust to those changes at her own pace, it's like, this is so valuable for you long-term. You are, and this is not a knock on anybody who's like this, because we have a lot of very successful people within our company. Anthony is one of them. Anthony can be very black and white, and you can be very successful with that. A new store lives in the gray, though.
Yeah.
And so coming and being able to take this at your own pace it's like, it's not always about getting thrown into the fire. Sometimes it's about being able to transfer in and learn and get to kind of get a grasp of this as you're going. And I'm like, all this will do will be make you stronger in the future. Like, you can't always be just looking at like the next opportunity. You have to be looking at like the culmination of all the things that you're learning and where that can lead you ultimately. This is all, and we have to explain this to people all the time. I did a conversation with Will, because Will was like, is there going to be room for like management structure besides like you and Anthony? And I'm like, yeah. Like, I'm like, do you know how many people are in the management structure of like supplement superstores? He's like, I don't know. And I'm like 40 people.
Yeah.
And that's, like, throw First Form in there too.
Literally, like, there's so much opportunity, but it's like, explaining that it's not always about what's right in front of you. You might be sitting there thinking, I'm going to be the next manager of Norman. I'm going to be the next manager of Norman. I'm going to be the next manager of Norman. It's like, now you might be way out somewhere different and you don't even know. So it's about taking every day, like you're saying, like taking every day like it's building your resume, and not just getting excited and working hard when there's opportunity. And we've been really blessed to not have that. Like, everybody on staff has always been somebody who like clocks in every day to do their best.
The buy-in y'all have is insane.
Gotten lucky, that's for sure, man. That's And I think there's, obviously a handful of things that go into it, and like building culture, and like you talked about caring for the people. But at the end of the day, man, like you can do all those things and still get unlucky. We've gotten very, very lucky to have the people that we have.
If I went back and did my career all over again, I would have said, "Hey, slow down a little bit." Like in the moment, I'm like, "Okay, I want the next step." Like I'm still fairly ambitious, but now that I'm getting there and I'm getting into positions where I try to live in that a little bit over my head because it makes me become a better swimmer just over time. Yeah. So I'm always a little in over my head with all my jobs, and I figure it out because it's fight or flight at that point. It's survival at that point. But if I could go back to 19-year-old me when I got my first management job, I'd say, hey, slow down, because if you really want to be really good at this, then 7, 8, 9, 10 years from now, you'll wish you would have gotten more from this time versus racing to the finish line and not really enjoying and learning everything along that process. Yeah. There's people that are a couple of years older than me that are way better at what I do because they were a cook for a lot longer, and they were a bartender for a lot longer. Yeah. They were a kitchen manager for a lot longer. They were a bar manager for a lot longer. Right. So there's people that are not that much older than me, and I'm thankful I got where I've gotten as quickly as it happened. Thank God I was kind of rushed through the process because I'm thankful now. But when I'm looking at the gap in my skill set, like, man, a few months here and there, a few more like focusing on the process more versus like, hey, what's my job title? What's my salary? Yeah. Well, I used to collect business cards. I was so excited to have a business card. Yeah. I can't remember the last time I handed out a business card down. Like, I don't care what my title says. I literally care less. Right. But back at first, it's the coolest thing in the world. So I would have gone back and said, hey, slow down and smell the roses a little bit, because they're going to ask you what those roses smell like in 8 years, and you're going to forget. Like you're not going to have a very fond memory of what those roses smell like 7 years later. Right.
Man, I think there's something to be said though for filling up your plate to the point where you're in over your head a little bit, where I think personally I do better. Like I have to have time parameters, and I have to be able to delegate and keep it like at least somewhat manageable. But if I get to the point where it's like I can knock out my stuff in 6 to 8 hours in a day, and it's like a little by little, I can, every day is like not too bad and we're taking care of it, dude, I start to like get lazy. I start to procrastinate. Yeah. But dude, if I've got a list that's a mile long and it's mostly stuff that I've put on there of like, hey, I want to do this. We don't have to, but I want to add this. Like, I think this would be cool if we did this. When I fill it up and I've got a list a mile long and I've got to go 100 miles an hour all day to even take out somewhat of a chunk of it, is like, man, I feel like I operate better and in those scenarios or with that in that situation than I do with like a manageable amount of that. I could get it done in 6 hours.
So. Well, I mean, when you're backed into a corner, there's two kinds of people. You either fight for your life, or you say, hey, you know what? I'm going to play defense. I'm going to protect myself. I'm going to take this beating. And there's two kinds of fighters. With the kid who got beat up in middle school, so by high school he was jacked and pretty good at it because he learned how to defend himself the hard way. Yeah. You have the kid that took boxing lessons from 6th grade to 12th grade. If they fought, I don't really know who would win. One guy has more technique, one guy has more grit. So that's dependent on the fighters. But when you're looking at it like, hey, some people had to grow up scrappy and some had to go take a different route, and they're both successful at what they do, but they're how they got there is just different. I just got beat up a lot.
I think that's probably, I learn better that way.
Some people do. Some people need to be coached through a slower process and, spend years through technique to feel confident in the ring or whatever that fight looks like. Some people need to take 4 years of classes before they fight somebody.
Right. I think I need to be like, I'm one that's like, I think if you told me like, hey, like there's a chance you might get punched in the face, it's like, okay. If it happens, it happens. Yeah. I need to get punched in the face for me to be like, all right, I'm gonna go to some lessons.
and then I'm still going back and relearning or learning stuff for the first time that I could have learned a few years ago. But now that I'm aware of my knowledge gap, I'm like, okay, I know this much, but I'm very aware of, I'm hyper aware of what I don't know. So I'm going back and studying some of the 101s that, I could have learned at 18, 19, 20.
Yeah. But it is such a rewarding time because like I was talking to Will the other day and he was like, this has been the most challenging, but the most rewarding season of my life. He's like, my confidence in myself and my ability on what I can handle is through the roof. Yeah. He was like, I thought I could handle this. And now I realize I can handle 3 times that.
He's been tested.
Yeah. Oh, he's been tested.
You get back into the corner, like you find out what you're made of.
That's right. And it's been super cool. Same with Kaylin too. Like Kaylin's like somebody who gets very used to like her routine and is very very good at her routine. And I think that that's like an important thing to like stress, that like she's super good at what she does. So
very
like
scheduled.
Yeah. And so her coming into being in a situation where it's like totally out of her comfort zone, it's the same thing for her. It's like you're realizing what you can handle.
Exactly.
You're realizing how far and how good you can
Kaylin looks up and she's like, wow, I'm by myself and a ton of customers are coming in, but I'm aware, I'm a lot more equipped to handle this than I thought, because I had never been tested to that extent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Working, and it's like, schedule is crazy. Sample events are crazy. It's hard to, it's not as routine as working a store that has 5 people working.
Yeah.
7 years of structure. Everyone, the newest employees, 3 years like in.
It's black and white. It's set up. You know your customer base. You know everything. You go to a new area, and as somebody who's worked at all 3 stores, you treat people the same, but you talk to everybody differently.
Yeah.
Like it's different at Quail than it is at Norman, and it's different at UConn. And so, them kind of going through these seasons, and I think Will's really gotten an appreciation for it as somebody who came from Quail going over to UConn, is that when it comes to volunteer time, well, there's only 2 hands.
Yeah.
And so,
and I'm busy right now.
Yeah. When it goes, hey, Saturday we've got this, and I'm on shift. So there's 1 volunteer hand, and you know what, you've got to do it.
You can volunteer, or I can make you do this.
Right, exactly. Like, and I don't want to, but this is what it's going to have to take. And and he knew what he signed up for.
Mm-hmm.
But you actually get into it, and you get into the nitty gritty, and you start explaining this, and then I get to tell him again, like, oh, by the way, you never get to use that as an excuse later. So
I mean, y'all mentioned it in one of the previous episodes. Is like y'all are confident in your playbook and your game plan at new stores. And you also have no idea if UConn's going to go like this or like this, because like I get asked all the time what I've learned from of my last 5 restaurant openings. They've all been within the last 4 years, so they've been back to back to back. And the one thing I've learned from all of them is how much you can't copy and paste.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of systems, a lot of structures that you can copy and paste. And I'm not worried about those, because I know, like, hey, I've done this enough times to know that this works everywhere I've tried it. But the amount of things you can't copy and paste, the demographics, the business flow, team dynamic, you have different employees doing the same thing, that it just doesn't really work as well. Different skill sets, whatever. I've learned how much you can't copy and paste, and I have a massive respect for that, because I'm aware of like, hey, this worked here and not there. It works, 50% of the time. Right. So it's a coin flip if it works.
Well, and one of the other things too, and I know you understand this as well as anybody, especially with the thing that you do, is because you're at a place, but you're not there forever, is setting it up for success once you're gone. And the care and the tiptoeing and the things that you have to do to make it so that like the day that I walk away from this, it can be just as successful as the day I was here, is such a tough thing to do when it's talking about relationships or whatever we have going on, in the UConn or even in the Norman community. And that's something that I've been super proud of, is whenever I go down to Norman, I'll kind of make a swing through a lot of the gyms and hang out with people that I like and know, and go check some places out. And all of them tell me like how great the store is. And all of them tell me how great Preston is, and Christian, and everybody, Hossie, and all of them, and Alex. And so that's super rewarding, especially when I'm being told like, and they're kind of jokingly saying this, but there's 2 people who could run Norman, and you were one of them, and the other person's doing it.
Yeah.
And it's like, and you love hearing that, because it's like, I have to build this not for today. I have to build this for 20 years.
You have to over care. You have to over communicate all of your values. That way, if it drops in 30% of quality, they're still above that 85, that 90%. Right. Like you have to be at 120%.
Always.
That way, when you leave, they stay 90 and above.
Well, and you know this just as well. You can't have your everyday regular introducing himself to the new leadership. Yeah. Like you have to, you have to have these relationships before I'm gone.
Yeah.
You have to be building them. You have to be transitioning. It has to be a situation where I can step away and you can have the relationship just as strong as I did. We've talked about this, whether it comes to sampling events or just partnering with people for different things, or just, whatever we do, is I'm setting this up not for today. I'm setting this up for the next 10 years. I'm setting this up so that Will or whoever's working or managing UConn can do this forever. And one of the ones that can be counterintuitive at times, like a good example was, we've got a great relationship with Fit Camp 180 in UConn. They're literally right behind us. Brittany, who owns the place, is one of the absolute sweetest people that I've met. Literally so nice. Like goes out of her way to send nice text messages to us and like just telling us how blessed she feels to be associated and being close to us. And it's a wonderful, wonderful lady. She's fantastic, and become, like good friends of ours. And so, there was a super interesting dynamic, and I had to kind of explain this to Will, is the first time we were going there to set up a table, she was like, okay, cool. When are you coming? I'm going to, can you send me over some kind of picture of you guys? And I'm going to make a Facebook post and I'm going to make an Instagram post and get everybody on staff and all of our members super excited for you to be there. And I had to be like, could you not? Right. And I didn't put it that way. I was like, no, like, don't worry about it. Like, seriously, like, I don't want to do that to you. And from the outside looking in, it goes, why would you do that? Why would you tell her essentially not to at that moment? And I've explained this to you, and I had to explain to Will and explain to multiple people, is because I'm not setting up your sample event today. I'm setting up this sample event for perpetuity. And the one thing that you have to do when you want the ability to go places and to have the ease of the relationship being there is you never create us coming there. You doing us a favor is never work for you. Yeah. And as soon as I let her do work, now next time she feels bad if she doesn't. And it's like, nope, I can't make this be work for you. I have to allow this to be all I need. You don't understand how much you're doing for me by just giving me a thumbs up. And that is more than anything I could ever ask for. And so it's part of setting this up. So not a situation where we can go this week. Like I want to be able to go, we need to be able to go,
3 years from now.
Yeah. We need to be able to go 14 times a year for in 3 years. Mm-hmm. And it's like, in 3 years, if she's still feeling like she has to make an Instagram post and post to all her members and all these things to like get this, the day that she has too much on her plate, we don't get to go.
It's a discount tattoo theory. Like, hey, I'm not going to let you give me a discount because I want to keep the expectations very clear amongst us. I'm a paying customer and you provide a great service.
I don't want to come back in next time and you be like, do I need to offer him a discount?
It's awkward for everybody.
Now I feel obligated, so maybe I might scale back on the size of it.
Right.
You guys are explaining reasons, like great reasons why we promote from within as opposed to hiring outside management. Is having people be able to step in and understand the situation of how to handle sample events and relationships with gyms in the area, and and have people that are familiar with the customers. Like where you walked into Norman and we had a brand new person that said, hey, is it your first time in? You have a little bit of, give them a little bit of grace because they're the brand new employee at the company in general. But if we have the manager at Norman saying, hey, is this your first time in? That's maybe a little less forgivable because that's the person that's supposed to be running things. But when the brand new person says, hey, is it your first time in? And then Preston's like, dude, that's Andrew. Yeah. Like,
right.
Get out of here.
That's what we need.
Exactly.
It's good to have that core group that is still around. And, to let them know, like, hey, it's someone that's there to make your regulars feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's why one of the things is, us maintaining, at least for me in my future position, one of the things that I want to do is to be present in the stores on regularly, and part of my future goals, me being the person who starts and establishes all these stores, pays dividends to that. If I want to oversee the stores, I need to know what it's like to run Yukon on a daily basis. I need to know what it's like to run Norman on a daily basis. I need to know what it's like to run store 4, store 5, whatever that looks like, because then I can give real input. I built the relationships there. Yeah. I built the gym relationships. I built this and I built it to sustain. So let me help. If we're having a problem, I can be the person. I can be the subject matter expert on how to run Yukon. I can be the subject matter expert on how to run X, Y, and Z. And come in and be like, oh, we're struggling with relationships in Norman. Like, Chad doesn't come and see us anymore. What the hell are we doing?
Yeah, who did we offend to get those people to stop? Stop feeling special.
One really cool goal that you have, like one specific one, is to be able to walk in the store. Like if you're overseeing the management team of several different stores, is to be able to go walk into a store that you helped start and you worked in day to day, and to be to be able to hang out in there for the day, just with the employees and the management and the staff overall, and have a regular customer come in and see you for the first time in 2 years.
Right.
And be like, I know them. And
Right.
it's like the staff knows them, but like, man, they know Thomas too. Okay. Like
Right.
it's really something cool to look forward to.
Absolutely.
I think my favorite thing about the current team that's at my last job was there were times where, and it was a very female heavy team, and I'm convinced females just pay attention to detail differently than guys. Like it's I've worked with enough mixes to know like, hey, these particular girls are super anal about these details that I'll overlook because I'm thinking about 100 details and they've got 2. They've got tacos and queso, they've got margaritas and whatever beer. But there were times where food would come out, and to me, it was in that passable range, and they would throw it away. Like, hey, that queso is a little cold. Or, hey, you know what? That taco has a little bit too much of this on it. I'm going to go ahead and remake it. And there were times where I'd see it and think, man, I thought it was good enough, but I never said anything because I never wanted to prohibit them from making that call. So, I had the utmost confidence when my time to leave was that they knew the standard. Heck, maybe even times better than me who set the standard. And I'm thankful that they paid that much attention to detail to where when I'm gone, I know that they'll stay within a passable range.
9 times out of 10, when I see someone making a call that I'm not sure is the right call, or even seems from my perspective like the wrong call, is I'll maybe ask a couple of questions about it, and I try and do it in a way where I'm not trying to micromanage. 9 times out of 10, once I have more information, I learn that they are actually making the right call.
They have context.
Yeah.
I actually avoid doing. Same thing. I avoid trying to coach or correct until I have context, and I assume in the moment they know something I don't. I'll go back around later and say, hey, what happened with that? They're like, oh, well, X, Y, and Z, ABC. I'm like, dang, great call. I wouldn't have made that if you were gone because I didn't have the prior context that they came in this morning. We forgot their queso. So when they came in for dinner, you bought it. Whatever that looked like.
Right.
I didn't know that, but you did. And I trusted you to make that decision.
I'm sorry I asked.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, it's empowering your people to feel confident in making the hard calls and to know that if they make the wrong one, that it's a coachable moment and it's not a fireable moment.
Yeah. And man, there's even situations where that 1 out of 10 times that they make, slightly just not the right call, that it's sometimes better to even just let it go. It's better for them to be able to build confidence in making that call.
Then they'll second guess themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're coaching them too much and correcting them on like every time they're making a mistake, now they're correcting they're overthinking the 9 out of 10 times that they were making the right call.
They overthink their training, and now they're making more mistakes by not trusting they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
All right, fellas. I got bad news.
We over 2 hours?
Oh, yeah. It's 9:30.
It's bedtime.
Yeah, this was one of the quicker ones for sure. This went by so fast. This is what we talk about when people are like, "Oh, the podcasts are 2 hours." I could sit here for
2 more.
Easy. And these are conversations that we've had a million times, but it's they go by so fast, and it's tough.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Tell you what, man, dude, but killer time, man.
Ditto.
Love the perspective that you bring in because this is something that we talk about a lot, and I think this is why we get along, obviously friends wise, relationship wise, and then also like business wise, is that we have we are all kind of cut from the same cloth when it comes to like the ideals of how to do this, because we do implement so much, and it was really interesting to hear your perspective on that, but we do implement so much of the hospitality industry like into our retail location. And so super cool getting that perspective. And man, you always have, I was literally taking notes of things that you were saying tonight. And
I had an outline. No, I am 100% shoot from the hip. My whole life lives right here. It's all quick draw.
Right. That's where I want to live too.
That is where you live.
Right on those hips.
Man, it's an honor and pleasure to be here. One of my favorite accomplishments is, I think so highly of you two and your team. So for leaders of such a high caliber to think, highly of me, or to think of me as an equal, or even someone to take advice from, it means more than y'all know. So like I take notes, and I give, one of Thomas's favorite speech is we want to create such an experience that they'd come back in just to say hi. If everything was gone and we sold everything off the shelves, they pop in and be like, hey, Kevin, how are you? Hey, Ryan, good to see you. Just popping in to say hi. Right. I give that speech to all of my teams now, because that's the kind of experience we want to give. So, feelings mutual. I learn a ton every time I talk to you. So glad to be here. Well, thanks for the invite.
This was one that I was genuinely looking forward to, because this conversation looks like probably most of the conversations we have with you. And I always really enjoy them because we get to talk about the intricacies of the hospitality industry, man. And it's fun to talk about it with someone that truly understands and gets what it takes to to be next level with those things. So it's I was genuinely looking forward to talking and catching up with you, because we don't get to see as much. So we're looking forward to seeing you more now that you work a 9 to 5.
That's right.
I can be here by 7 any day of the week.
Yeah.
Hey, all right. Don't tempt us.
So we'll see you Monday through Friday, 7
7 to 9.
every day.
Right. That's right. That's right.
And I would do it for you.
That's right. We know you would. Well, dude, this was great. I legitimately mean, like, we were saving you because we knew this was going to be such a good episode.
Yeah.
I've never been on a podcast before, so I'm glad this was the first
Oh,
one.
dude, you killed it.
Yeah.
You absolutely killed it.
Yeah.
You get rolling and it's just a conversation, and
Right.
it's but dude, you were you killed it.
I wish there was an outline and questions. And on my drive here, I'm like, no, I'm thankful it's not, because our conversations are organic and they're better because they're not prompted.
Yeah,
100%.
every question that got asked was just, I'm genuinely curious of this. I know you're the same way. But all right, guys, we're wrapping this up, and we appreciate it. And yeah, that's it. Episode 16.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Yep. Thank you.
I've had to piss for like an hour and a half.
Oh, you're a trooper.
I meant to mention something when we started too, if anybody has to.
That'll be